Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Hooligan Chronicles. Actually, this is part two
Hmm.
of Bad Boy making an appearance once again. Justin Hall, welcome.
My man, it's always. I know we've been trying to do this for a long time, so to get it back to back episodes with Robert here, it's all in good fun.
Yeah, and especially Justin was threatening me that he has questions for me, so now I'm really scared.
Yeah, I had some stuff. We talked so much last time. I had some some they would have been like longer sort of played out questions. Something like some stuff non industry terms, but we got talking about so many awesome topics last time. I mean, not to be biased, but we covered some good stuff. So
No, it was great. It was,
yeah.
like I said, it was definitely by far one of my. I mean, we only done like what 11, 12 episodes, but that one, I mean, we carried on, and Robert will attest to this. We actually discussed it later on that we've done almost 3 hours, and it was we didn't even feel it. So I mean, a lot of people requested an encore, and I think that this makes sense because clearly we didn't cover everything, and this time around we'll be able to just have a little bit more fun.
Yeah, and then like we talked about last time, I know it was kind of a last second thing we wanted to involve because I think that's what Robert and I, that's what we would always do on podcasts, and I know Rob, you like to interact with people a lot, so that's always my favorite way to do podcasts and interactions is kind of on the fly because you never know sort of what's going to come up. And Robert and I have talked about how much social media, and especially in the supplement space, it's such curated content all the time that anybody can sound smart when you spend 4 hours being spoon fed some material and stuff, but it doesn't mean really, and not just in an educational sense, but it's like when you have everything perfectly set up for you, a lot is left to be desired sometimes. So
No,
anyway,
I agree. I agree 100% on because the thing is that I strongly believe that we definitely can cover some, industry news, obviously, because we do work within the industry, and we can cover some fun facts. But at the same time, it's the most natural way is actually having a conversation as you would have with your friend, and various topics will come up, and you discuss them. Sometimes it will lead to different. Path, and sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's not, but as long as you keep it natural and good, I think that's what's engaging the audience when it's non-scripted, so to speak. Even the questions that are coming, they definitely can be fun, but as long as you answer honestly, I think that's all
yeah.
that matters, and people will feel when you're natural about the conversation and when staged.
Well, I think there's also maybe a topic we can cover already is there's a fear, I think, not just in our space but in social media in general. There's like a fear of people to say that I don't know the answer. Sometimes Robert and I we'll get a question, maybe something very in depth about supplements, and there's two of us, and it's still we might not know there might not be an answer, or we're just not really familiar with it. And I think there's a lot of people that are just so terrified in this space to say to stay in their lane and say I don't know exactly, and sometimes they'll sort of give out an answer, and then they have to spend all this time defending themselves because they would rather just make it seem like it. So I think it's good sometimes to be put on the spot because sometimes you're forced to go, I have no idea what the answer is to that question. It's humbling sometimes.
Yeah, I think part of that stems from some people have this guru complex where they feel like if they give any any chink in their armor, they give the merest perception of not knowing something, it's on like they're going to lose their following, their subscribers. Just be honest. It's the same thing I deal with like when I'm dealing with my 5-year-old. If you make a mistake, it doesn't mean you're a horrible person. It doesn't mean we hate you. It just means you messed up. Nobody's perfect. We're all human here. So if you don't know something, just own up to it and say, hey, I don't know. I will go look into it and we'll circle back and do it all over again.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, lots of people already commenting. Chris, good. Sandeep, Sean, Subtalk, whole lot of sexiness. Yes.
Oh man.
Robbie, you sent some questions over the wire right before the podcast. Mm-hmm. Do you want to start off? We've got 6 topics plus whatever ones you guys put up here as well. Do you want to lead off with the heavy hitter? Or do you want to save that?
Yeah, I mean, we can start with the first one because everybody's talking about it. I mean, it's obviously good to get it to have a perspective of that. I mean, an opinion, but yeah, we can mix
Sean,
it up. I mean,
how
questions from the
funny?
audience.
Sorry, but how funny is that? Is Sean's comment right there?
Justin drinking a gorilla.
Sean, I think I said it before we were actually live, but I said I picked this up. I was like, I'm just drinking my Gorilla Mind, but we weren't on the air yet. I don't think.
Oh, I think we're going to need to give some perspective because some people may not know what's going on, including me. So we'll get into that. James Gray, Jim G. King, sup, legends. What's up,
What's
James?
going on, man?
All right. So first question is Ghost versus Gorilla Mode. So let's put some context and then we can get into it.
So this is right. So this is the energy drink question that was the controversy of the week in the supplement space. I noticed the other day somebody had sent me something that Ryan had done. It was side-by-side comparison of this isn't the formula. Because, Rob, have you seen the Gorilla Mind energy drink formula?
I saw bits and pieces. Yes,
It's cool. It's really cool.
I like.
Yeah, Robert, did you see it?
Yes, I'm pulling it up now. So the
Okay.
For an
consumers can see
energy
it.
drink, I mean, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, like, I mean, the thing I've always said, too, was this goes, and my initial reaction to this whole thing, besides the drama of the call-outs and the some things that I thought Ryan's, what he said was totally uncalled for, but the actual formula of this kind of goes back to what we were saying for a long time with Ghost. I said, people would always ask me about Bang energy drinks and Rain energy drinks and all this other stuff. And I was like, I don't want just liquid caffeine. I said, I just had always been saying, like, I think we can do better when it comes to energy drinks. And then fast forward, Ghost comes along with something really cool, fully transparent. We got some nootropics. And then it's made the energy drink category sort of step up, right? So when I heard Gorilla Mind or whatever, that they were going to make one, I haven't used Gorilla's products, but obviously, like, I have followed along with some of the stuff that, like, Derek talks about. He's obviously a super smart guy. He's killing it over there. They're obviously a super strong brand. Anybody that gets out there as much as Derek does and puts himself out there and says information has my respect in this space. But, they said they released their own energy drink, and I was like, as long as it's not just another carbon copy, I said I'm going to be on board with this. And there's some things in here I think that are really cool. I think the uridine and the saffron, especially, like, that's just something that I got to be honest, I never expected to see saffron extract in an energy drink. So even if it's not necessarily like something that revolutionizes everything, I'm like, I like to see different takes on things, especially from really smart people with a lot of good resources like Gorilla, I think.
Yeah, where is the controversy at? Is it in the branding of it? Is it
It's the call outs. So if you flip the can around, there's like the icon,
little boxes.
Yeah, the icons in the boxes. It is because there's a weirdness because the thing that Ryan said that I didn't like was he said this is theft. I think that word is I don't think we should use that word unless you're really ready to sort of like stand behind that. Like, there is obviously theft that happens in this space, but I thought that was kind of a shitty thing to say. I don't think it was theft, but if they took sort of a similar layout of the back of the can, but like as some people have also pointed out, Ghost wasn't the first people to put call outs on their can like that, and people were showing Rain's can compared to it. It was just, I don't know. It was a little bit weird.
I think I agree with everything Justin said, 100%, no doubt about it. Number one, the formulas are not identical, not even close. I mean, they're as close as any other pre-workouts. I think most pre-workouts are way closer than this. I think the formula is I'm not going to say it's amazing or anything like that, because let's face it, it's an energy drink, so it's definitely expensive. The margins are very, very small, and they operate on volumes. So I think in
Right.
terms of that, at you know, this is coming from a pond, which we like to fucking fully blast everything. Nevertheless, I think that this is very respectable what they did. I think that the formula is kick-ass. At the end of the day, most of the energy drinks are purchased because of taste. Let's face it. I mean, we enjoy the taste. They nice. They refreshing. I mean, it's almost like drinking a Coke or something like that. I mean, I don't really get that much energy from any energy drinks, to be honest. To me, they just I enjoy them. I enjoy the flavor. I love, for example, Monster. I love Rain. Some of the Ghost ones I also like, but I drink them mostly for fun, and that's it.
Yeah.
In terms of formula, definitely nothing theft, nothing similar. I mean, maybe an ingredient or two, but I mean, this is a very unique and definitely well put together formula. Clearly, they've been working on it. In terms of the look of the can from the front, nothing similar. Absolutely nothing. It looks completely different. It's very unique. It's definitely its own product. So the only knock on Gorilla Mind, I guess, is the fact that people are saying that, oh, look, the boxes and the callouts from the back. But let's be honest, Ghost is not the first one to do it. Multiple brands are doing it. I think Rain is doing it too. There are different companies. So I think this is exaggerated. And my biggest thing is, and again, I agree with Justin what he said, that some of the words that Ryan was using, as well as Price Plow, is completely uncalled for. I think it's very, very unprofessional. And let's be perfectly honest, would they call out Gorilla Mind if Gorilla Mind was one of the collaborators, customers? They would never do that. It would never be the case. So the only reason, I'm not going to accuse Dan of telling them to do so, because, I don't have the facts. I honestly think that probably Ryan and Price Law are behind us on their own merit, and they decided to cause this shit and controversy. But I think that Gorilla Mind did a great job. Hopefully it tastes good, and it should be left alone. This is completely blown out of proportion, and everybody picked on it. Obviously, it's also what Nick Vigili also picked on this. So everybody's going crazy. But the truth is like, if I would go after everyone who copied Apollon when it comes to Hooligan or Assassin, I mean, I would be calling out a lot of people. But let's face it, I mean, there is no such thing as protecting the formula or protecting, the look. There are plenty of very, very similar looks. I mean, even Ghost was really copied, a few times now. I think take it as flattering more than anything. There are similarities. Clearly you're doing something right. But other than that, I think this subject is, again, like I said, way blown out of proportion. I think the language that Ryan used, he went a little bit too far for my taste, and I think it was completely uncalled for.
Yeah, I think the goal, right, though, with part of it, like part of, his reasoning for making that post and doing it is to drive up some engagement and get people talking about it. Because let's be honest, like when he talks about other brands and companies and stuff like that, there's not much to say. There's no, people don't get excited about, when you just tell people about the next product. So if you can find a wedge to drive up, engagement for your own platform, we know that he'll do that. And that's kind of what he's doing. So it worked because we're talking about it, here. But I think like one thing too, and I definitely want to hear Robert's take about this one, that one thing that I'll talk about the product, the important part. One thing that's very cool about this product is, so we see so many people out there right now. One of the things we've always struggled with in this space is getting the average person to get into supplements, right? There's like this wall in between what we know, and we know that there's all these like really cool things in this space that the normal person struggling in their day-to-day could actually find benefits from, but they're scared of it, right? So a lot of people have been discovering Ghost products and their lineup because of the energy drinks. So that's awesome for the entire industry. Everybody wins from that because we get new customers into the space. So one thing that I love about the Gorilla Mind one is it includes the saffron extract. So the reason why I love that is there is so many people out there right now that could benefit from using saffron, but they don't know it because saffron, we're not allowed to say certain things in this space, but it is been shown to be beneficial for people struggling with anxiety and depression. It's a very like calming, sort of feel good type ingredient. When people are reaching for energy drinks, sometimes they're going on that roller coaster of their day, and then they're adding more stimulus to it, and they start to feel like crap. Saffron, if you can sneak that into the average person's day, I think all of a sudden I think they'll feel it. I think they'll feel like, imagine taking an energy drink and normal people like just actually feeling better, taking it. That's what I'm curious to see, like how people like that, how like the person that's not used to using nootropics and certain herbs like that, like I want to see how they react to this product. I want to try it myself, obviously, of course.
Yeah, I think it's coming out on April 17th. I think I'm actually curious where they're going to sell it, because most of the products, I mean, the entire line is based on direct to consumer pretty much. And I wonder where this is going to be purchased, because they have to have some kind of an outlet where to sell it, but I don't know where.
That's a good point, because they just opened up wholesale. A few people that I know, I don't know if Natural Body Inc. Did, but I know like a few places, Gorilla is coming into the wholesale market. So I wonder if Gorilla was setting up that to coincide with the launch of the energy drinks and maybe get that in there too.
Well, energy drink will definitely get the foot in the door. That's for sure. I mean, I think the design is also pretty cool, and I suspect it's going to taste pretty good too.
Yeah, I think the only reason why I sort of I don't want to say I avoided Gorilla products was they have a lot of like nootropics and they pre-workouts, and they use a ton of canna in there, and canna and me don't always agree. So I was like, I'll kind of hold off on. But I'm a big fan of like their formulas, and obviously, like I said, anytime you have someone that's as open and puts himself out there as much as Derek does, from Gorilla, even if I don't always agree with what he says, which I'm not sure, I don't like listen to him actively, but anybody that's willing to get out there and interact and help people the way he does, that I've seen him with like blood work and all this other stuff, then, I think it's always good to see people like that.
Yeah. I had a couple of thoughts on everything before. Sorry for stepping away. I had to go set up the hash line with some stuff.
Because so we talked about saffron. You're like into that whole thing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, initially, okay, so I like that it's transparently dosed. Regarding labeling things, this isn't the first time Gorilla has borrowed somebody else's style, or not borrowed, but done something in a very similar fashion. So we look at Gorilla Mode, their pre-workout tubs, and Primeval has been doing this apeshit stuff since at least 2017, which is several years before Gorilla Mode came on the scene and did the exact same thing, but just turned the head sideways. So, I mean, it's fine. It's out in the open. It's public domain and everything. That's fine. That's, this isn't the first time. So the fact that they're riffing on Ghost's packaging, they've done it with other things. Not that it's good or bad, but this is kind of a pattern of behavior. I like the formula overall. My main sticking point, and I've said this before with you, Justin, when we've had to break down the Gorilla Mode pre-workouts before, is this high dose of huperzine. So
yeah,
they love this ingredient. It's almost an everyday product.
It is, and they typically put in 400 micrograms of it. While that dose is fine for people with severe cognitive decline and dementia, for an otherwise healthy individual, I don't think it's something they should be taking every day, particularly in the 200 to 400 to 500 microgram dose range, because most people are probably going to be taking this energy drink, at least one or two of these a day, in conjunction with most likely one of his pre-workouts and nootropic supplements, which also has a hefty dose of huperzine. So that is really where I'm curious, or I'm hesitant to advocate this product over other energy drinks.
Yeah, because we know that huperzine adds up quickly. Like, there's a lot of things, because huperzine is always the last line on a on a supplement table, like we know sometimes the ingredients you're feeling and noticing the most are the ones at the very bottom. You know, the yohimbines and the huperzines and things like that. And I think that we've sort of like tried to understand like the half life of huperzine, and we know it's long. We're not really sure maybe how long. So then all of a sudden you start to notice, you know, you have multiple products with it coming in. It's not necessarily like leaving your system. Next thing you know, you have some weird problems. And it's one thing for people that are really used to using nootropics and being in the space. You can kind of go, oh, okay, I feel it, I know it's time to back off. But someone that has no experience with that, they might just think that they're having some sort of strange reaction, you know, to the product itself. And definitely too much huperzine can make you feel a little bit weird. It makes, you know, your motor functions can be a little bit off and stuff like that, and that can, you know, freak some people out.
Yeah. I do like the formula of the gram of N-acetyl-tyrosine is solid, 400 alpha GPC, great, 200 caffeine, 200 uridine, which is going to work nicely alongside alpha GPC and L-tyrosine to kind of potentiate and upregulate and resensitize dopamine receptors a lot, which I'm definitely a fan of that. Theanine to take the edge off for some people. Saffron is a really cool ingredient. I'm going to do a shameless plug for the Patreon where I did a multi-thousand word deep dive into the cognitive benefits of saffron specifically.
Yeah, that's what, so I don't know, did you hear what I was saying while you were off camera there?
Not the last part of it.
Well, I was saying about what I thought was really cool about this is there's so many people that wouldn't understand how saffron could help them, and we're sort of like sneaking in some saffron into their lives. And a lot of people that are just grabbing energy drinks don't really take the time to try to figure out like, why am I feeling like this? And a lot of people, if they're reaching for energy drinks and they're looking, you know, they're riding that roller coaster a little bit.
Yeah.
Something like saffron, the way that I think it's been effectively used, you know, with anxiety, depression possibly. I know it's kind of like we're not supposed to talk about that stuff, but
yeah, it's got some SSRI properties too, which are kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've been using it. I've been experimenting with it on and off since about December, just to kind of try it out and see how, you know, prolific the mood enhancement is. Not that I'm struggling with depression or anxiety, but I got more interested in like its neuroprotective and you know, ramping up certain neurotransmitters in the brain that I thought it would be fun to try with, and I like it. I personally like it.
Yeah, like I said, I was surprised to see it in an energy drink, but I think it's a really cool. That was the thing, that and the uridine, I thought was the two things that stuck out to me the most with this product. That I think people that just don't know what that feels like, I'm curious to see like how their experience is, because it's not something that's going to light you up, stimulating, but people will probably, especially as much as people are, you know, talking about their struggles with depression and anxiety, it's everywhere, right? Stress is just the word we hear all the time.
Yeah.
But there are actually some little things, even maybe in an energy drink, that can help, you know, level people out a little bit. So I'm curious to start hearing the feedback.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. You guys out there listening, let us know what you think about this.
Yeah, because there was a lot of people that had feelings about it, that's for sure.
NutriCartel has Gorilla Mind products as well.
Yeah, I saw Jake had it. I know I buy a lot of stuff from Sean at NutriFit. I know he brought it in. So,
speaking of Sean's, perhaps Fitness Informant trashed it because Gorilla Mind wouldn't be a client. Ryan has a background in CPG products and brand building, so he's probably got a little bit more insight into the legalities and what you can do, what you can't do versus when you're riffing on other people's marketing and whatnot. He's also, you know, he's known Dan and Ghost for years, as the guys at Price Law have too. So if somebody's messing with your boys, you're going to go have their back. So I can understand them coming to their defense in a certain, you know, understanding.
Yeah. That part of it is, you know, I don't care. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's like,
Gorilla is now in Natural Body Inc.
Yeah, I guess that's what we were talking about too, that maybe that I heard from a few retailer friends of mine, Jake, one of them, and Sean, those guys, they had mentioned how, you know, Gorilla's been direct to consumer. They actually kill it on Amazon too, but they had been that way for a long time. So I was like, hypothesizing it kind of coincided with the energy drink, maybe getting into wholesale. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Along those same lines, Sandeep, what about alpha GPC after the new study that it can cause strokes?
So, Robert, I was talking to Michael from Glaxon about this. With you,
Yeah.
I said, it's funny because everyone blew a gasket when Glaxon apparently did a podcast or whatever with. First of all, I was like, dude, we were talking about this 2 years ago. You and I brought this up when that study actually came out. I was like, where was the outrage back then? It's because no one told those guys to get excited about it, right? So
Yeah.
We talked because you wrote a huge article about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull those two up right now.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug for more of my writing. Alpha GPC, friend or foe? New study. Alpha GPC may increase stroke risk, and that was written March 7th, 2022.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a long time because we talked about that on the podcast before, I think, because I think you were writing the article about it and had been talking about the study on there.
Yeah. So it's a lot of it is linked to the TMAO stuff, and the evidence is not conclusive on it. It's mostly a lot of associational studies.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are really concerned about the TMAO stroke risks from alpha GPC, get choline from your diet, so eggs, beef liver, or CDP choline, which is less likely to be converted into TMAO and its associated cardiovascular hazardous metabolites.
Yeah, well, first things first, when it comes to I talked about this on my stories. One of the first things is when they say it increased stroke risk, and this is not to say that there's nothing there or we should just dismiss everything, not at all. The stroke risk went from, this is in like 12 million people, and now there's more studies about there than this too, but the stroke risk went from, it was like 0.6% to like 0.9% or whatever it was. Like, it went up significantly, but it was still a super tiny, amount. So it wasn't, like all of a sudden 6 million more people started having strokes from using GPC, and it was older people too. So that whole thing. But there's one thing, Robert, that I mentioned on my stories the other day that I wanted to bring up to you was, is this the same kind of thing? I don't remember exactly what happened, but when they started to demonize carnitine and like red meat, isn't that the same kind of thing? Because carnitine breaks down and leaves TMAO traces behind, and then Harvard Health had come out and said that red meat and carnitine gave strokes, and then they had to backtrack that. Was that like related? I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's all part of the same thing. So carnitine, choline, and betaine as well can all be broken down into TMAO. TMAO is a metabolite of the digestion of all of those, of each of those three molecules. So obviously there's going to be some predisposition. If you have a family history of cardiovascular disease, that could play into it. Your personal diet, lifestyle, stress, your gut microbiome, how all of that other stuff is affecting it. This can all increase or decrease the expression and presence of TMAO and its assorted, adverse potential effects in the body. There's also some research studies that I've quoted in the article showing that increased TMAO levels, or go back and search on the Advanced Molecular Labs website where we get into TMAO real specifically, because Steve Bleckman over at AML is very much against not putting choline in his products, keeping it very low, TMAO, limiting red meat consumption, mostly going towards a Mediterranean diet, which is why he's asked me to write those articles for the site. So am I overly concerned about alpha GPC? If you're megadosing it, sure, I wouldn't do it a whole lot. I would mostly rely on getting CDP choline just because I get a better, nootropic experience from it than alpha GPC. Plus, as an added benefit, it's got less conversion to TMAO than alpha GPC, choline bitartrate, or choline citrate. It's a little more expensive, but I like it. I think the research might be a little bit more solid than some of the alpha GPC stuff. But yeah, choline, carnitine, betaine, they can all get transformed into TMAO and its assorted potentially adverse effects. But go check that out. And Thomas, just advancedmolecularlabs.com, and then just type in alpha GPC or carnitine or TMAO. and you'll look for any article that has my name on it.
Yeah, and let's clarify, like, when you said, how about Ben and Joey saying alpha GPC caused strokes, it was Joey was leading the conversation, and we know how that goes, so.
Yeah, Joey and I were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Sorry, I'll get this and then I'll shut up, Robbie. Joey and I were talking about that a couple of weeks ago when that study first came out. And he was entertaining the idea of maybe removing, either choline supplements or alpha GPC as one of the components of their choline blends. Now, nothing of it was final. It's just, hey, this is something we're considering. So if it's on Joey's radar, there's, there might be something to it. He's a pretty sharp individual.
Absolutely. Part of it kind of goes back to, I was having conversations, you and I had this conversation, and then I was talking to Michael and Joey about this over like the last probably year, 18 months or so, where, because I see this all the time, like, people always want us to give the direct answer, but a lot of times we are the study, we are the, we're the control, and so we're sort of like going through this, so we don't really know like these final answers just yet. So it's like one of those things where I'm like, we were talking about it, so some companies are kind of like, okay, let's just remove it because is alpha GPC, like for what we're using it, I started saying about like, I don't think it should be in all these pre-workouts. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but like the, not that I'm against the ingredient, it's got benefits, but we're weighing the risk sort of reward of the whole entire thing. And that's when I started to see companies that, because one person had alpha GPC in a product, and then so everyone started putting it in there, and I was like, yeah, but you don't know why you're doing it. That's my only thing is I was like, it's just sort of follow the leader. Sorry, Robbie, I know you were going
to No, go ahead. It's you see, the way I see it is like Robert right now just basically said it best, where he said there are numerous ingredients that potentially can be harmless. It's not just alpha GPC. It's there is a laundry list of supplements that can potentially be harmful. But the thing is that again, like Robert said, it's inconclusive. We don't have concrete answers. We don't have concrete human studies to back up those claims. It's at this point, it's strictly speculation. If we are Glaxon, Apollon, and many other brands, if we are to remove everything from our products that can possibly cause some side effects or problems down the line, we're probably not going to have any brands, because the bottom line is it's inconclusive. So the thing is that if you want to be super cautious, at the end of the day, they say cigarettes might cause cancer. Do they actually cause cancer? We don't know. Are they healthy? They probably not. But at the end of the day, it's not something that is very, very healthy for you. And yet it's sold, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Mm-hmm. We consuming Coke like it's out of fashion, and you know what? Coke is loaded with sugar and fucking diabetes in a can. Potentially very harmful. And the same thing was said about aspartame, but it was never actually proven that it does cause any adverse reactions. It was purely speculation. I think we got to be very, very careful in the supplement industry when we come out with these podcasts and news, and like Sandeep just said, the latest studies. There is no latest study. It just doesn't exist. There is a speculation, possibility, suspicion, potential, but nothing is proven. Nothing is set in stone. And let's face it, DMA was banned because it's potentially harmful. But is it? We still don't know. We don't know it, and we don't know any dosages. We don't know at what point it can kill you. Can it actually kill you? We don't know. Simple as that. Each and every country makes its own regulations. Some countries don't allow caffeine to go above 200 milligram, but yet they sell fucking ephedrine over the counter. There are so many things that can potentially kill you, that potentially can give you a stroke, can potentially give you a heart attack, but it's all speculation at this point. So I think, and I'm going to disagree with Joey, because he doesn't have any evidence, concrete evidence, that this is something that might cause any, harmful effects. We manufacturing supplements, and, there were speculation about creatine can fuck up your kidneys. There was speculation about it. People were talking that creatine is very bad for you. You
Still
know,
do.
yeah, they still do. That it makes you retain water. That it's going to kill you. That it's going to kill your kidneys, and it's a very harmful compound. But the thing is, it was never proven yet. People were actually stopping using what is now known a very beneficial, very good ingredient, very one of the best supplements that actually has multiple studies to back it up. So I think we got to be very careful, when we make these claims without any concrete evidence. And I remember, and I learned this actually from Robert as well, when companies also make claims, not supplement, but companies that manufacture various ingredients, they make all these claims that this is going to give you so much pump in rats. This is going to give you so much pump if you're a fucking, I don't know, a pig or whatever. But where's the human studies? It's just the bottom line is that everything needs to be validated and everything has to be proven. There are proven ingredients that actually work. We know the benefits of alpha GPC. We do know what it does. But just like anything, Robert is right. Nothing should be abused. There is a difference between using a product and abusing a product. When you're buying an energy drink and you're drinking one can that has 200-300 milligrams of caffeine, that's fine. But we know for a fact that there are people who are having 10 cans a day. They do. And that's abuse.
One thing that ties into an exact conversation I had the other day, because if you look at alpha GPC, one of the other things, and this is something that I know we go through when we're talking to people when they say this ingredient does this. If you look at alpha GPC, there are studies in there. There's research papers, you can read them. They used alpha GPC to treat people for stroke. Like, it actually was beneficial for them in that regards. So we know it plays in that vibe somehow, right? It works in that area. So for some people it works, and for some people it could be a negative experience. But it ties into something that you just said. There was somebody the other day, I got sent this video of he was a trainer, and he took the whole conversation great. Like, we had a good dialogue back and forth, but he said you shouldn't use pre-workouts that have caffeine in it, period, because they're vasoconstrictive and the whole 9 yards. And so I went there, and I didn't just go
look at Robert's reaction.
Right.
But the problem is, I'm sorry, people do believe that.
Right. Well,
nonsense.
Because it can work both ways, right? Like, we know that these ingredients, when they go in their body, they can do all kinds of funky stuff. So that's why I know, like, we cringe a little bit when people make these, like, bold claims. But that's what gets people to view your stuff, and that's what gets people attention, is if you can tell someone in 15 seconds that caffeine is dangerous because it's a vasoconstrictor pre-workout, that takes away everything all the stuff that's out there. It takes 2 seconds literally to Google search to understand that that's not true, that caffeine is not strictly a vasoconstrictor, but people will say it anyway. The whole point I think that he was getting at after we talked was he was essentially trying to get people to just chill out with caffeine, right? Which I'm like, okay, well, just say that next time instead of caffeine is a vasoconstrictor. Caffeine is, if anything, right, we have lots of data we can look at that shows caffeine has a significant vasodilating effect after a certain amount of time. So it's like, to just say that, and that's what we sort of fight against every single day. Exactly like what you're talking about, Rob, that it changes in different people in different scenarios about how you're using this stuff.
Absolutely. Nick, ayo, where has this trio been? Happy I can tune in. Welcome aboard, Nick. And while we have your attention, tickle the like button, subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a ton.
Yeah, I saw the Norvaline comment on there too. That was right. We had a big uproar about Norvaline for like a week. It causes brain damage and stuff. And
yeah, they mega dosed some cells with some Norvaline, and then it disrupted energy metabolism.
Yeah.
And it blew up the brain cells. But again, Norvaline isn't that effective of an arginase inhibitor.
No.
So if whether it's in supplements or not, fine. I mean, sometimes theory and mechanisms, which I love to geek out over, it's what my whole shtick is here, and my passion for the industry. But as cool as mechanisms and theory are, in practice, it's not that effective.
There's sometimes when we literally do not give the body enough respect. Like think about the things that the human body can withstand, and we're like, oh my gosh, if I have 400 milligrams of Norvaline instead of 300, I might, I'm going to get brain damage. People were asking, because I got a lot of questions the other day, because there's the lion's mane thing that's circulating again.
Is it that same fucktard? Is it still that same?
So I think that because of what that was, I think people are starting to parrot it around, or they're at least asking questions. Like anytime we have an ingredient that gains such popularity in the space, I think that it's always valid to go, hey, maybe let's pump the brakes and take a bigger look at this stuff. Because I know, like, Rob, you love using lion's mane. Lion's mane, if you read some of the studies, some of them have been used at 30 grams a day, 40 grams a day for months and months. It's been around for God knows how long, and but there's always, it's always worth reading into it and saying, hey, okay, before we just take everything with it in there, like, let's check it out. But there's these hot takes in this space that I just can't fucking stand, man. It's like you read one thing and then you go out there on your platform and you scare everybody with, because all you really want is someone to like your stuff or pass it along or talk about it on a podcast, because that's like more important than using any kind of common sense or context.
Yeah, Chris, it's definitely not you. That you are not the individual to whom I was referring. I have extensively discussed this issue, and if you spend 3 hours reading how much lion's mane is going to tank your libido on Reddit, and then you go and take lion's mane, I mean that's more placebo effect, or your self-fulfilling prophecy is going on there than anything. It's not lion's mane.
Well, I think, and that was kind of what I said going back to the Alpha GPC thing. I said, let's earmark this. And I think it was kind of like what you were saying, like in your article, and even like with the guy at Advanced Molecular Labs. He's not standing on a platform, demonizing and saying, like you see those people. I mean, they get on social media, that's what they do. But it's like, hey, this is why I'm choosing not to do it, and until further notice, I'm going to chill out with it, and maybe we should just. So I was like, I'll earmark this. So I was like, we'll keep an eye on it, and if other things come out, we'll see.
Yeah, it's one data point, and they're getting more data points on it, but we still have a lot to learn about the gut microbiome and the various interactions, feedback, negative feedback loops, and all of that stuff in the body.
Oh, the gut microbiome thing is almost, I don't want to say it's a fascinating topic, but one of the reasons why it's so fascinating and goes all over the place is because it's such a new sort of territory that we're talking about. I remember talking to people, they make it their life study, they have doctorates in this type of thing, and they're kind of going, we don't really know for sure. But so I'm like, but wait, so this person
the PhD in gut health doesn't really know. Can't give you a definite answer.
I was like, but you guys know, you know the answer, that this does this to your gut microbiome and everything gets trashed. So,
yeah. All right. We'll go a lighter-hearted issue. I'm going to let y'all start this, and I will be... Actually, have you seen Russo's Lion's Mane Broke Me? I have no idea who that is.
I eventually usually just say, just don't take things like an asshole, and you're probably fine. Especially if you work out. And lift weights and things like that. It's like, that seems to be one of the overarching... things that can combat these sort of negative, experiences with stuff, is if you lift weights and you're, physically active, then stuff really doesn't hurt you.
Yeah. All right. Robbie. User question submitted through your IG feed. Opinion on 015 brand failing.
Who the fuck is that?
That's Matt
that's
Lobliner's line, remember, that he did with the Mr. Olympia?
I don't. So maybe that's the point of the question.
There you go.
Was that the one that have like a yellow label?
Yes. I think it was around for probably like a year or something like that. I remember that.
Yeah, okay, I do remember these. I don't really know, because obviously, like Mark, I've always really liked the MTS line. I think that they're always like relatively, I don't want to say basic formulas, but they were like very price point effective for certain people. I really like what Mark and the team did over at Ambrosia. I think that's a really cool brand. So I don't know if maybe it was a case of just, maybe too many, too many buckets you're trying to fill at the same time. I'm not really sure, because it's like, when you have several successful brands and maybe you're trying to do another one, sometimes the resources get spread a little thin, because then it's like, how do you market a company that is maybe potentially a competitor with your own kind of stuff? I think, I'm not really sure. I don't remember them at all. So
yeah, it was pretty much here and gone probably within like a year. But I think that's the problem when you're trying to rely primarily just on one athlete. Even though maybe Mr. Olympia, but how many brands have really survived, from the guys who won the Olympia or something like that? I mean, Labrada succeeded, Gaspari obviously succeeded. I don't know if Jay Cutler is a major success. I think he is moderately successful.
Well, you think too that it also, there is been a big shift in who has influence in this space. So there are exceptions to the rule where you can build a successful brand along with a high level competitor, but I don't think that bodybuilders have the same effect on the industry that they used to. And nowadays, you see more of the influencers come from the TikTok space, younger people that sort of have been doing YouTube for a while, and they gain traction there. I just don't think that has as much impact anymore like it did, maybe in the.
But I also think that the consumer is getting a little bit trickier and a little bit smarter. I think that if you have somebody who is a popular individual, whether he's from TikTok or he's from bodybuilding or fighting or whatever, I don't think it's necessarily easy to sell to the consumer today. Because if you take, for example, and I would call them a successful company, of course, I think Blackstone is doing just fine, but without basically having anyone. I mean, I don't even think they have that many ambassadors. I don't think that they have any influencers, as far as I know. So I don't think that it's that important today. I mean, none of them, not Michael, not Joey, are really celebrities or some. Brandon Curry, correct. I don't think, but nevertheless, they succeed. So I think today it's more about branding, more about marketing, more about the quality of products that you put out. And I'm not saying that influencers and athletes don't play a role. They do. But it's also not as necessary as it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think the market has changed and things have shifted a little bit in a different direction. And plus, I think that because consumer got smarter and a little bit more efficient and economical when it comes to how they're spending money, because they have so many choices, even if you convince them to buy something just because, I'm going to give you an example. So there is this very popular athlete, influencer, who is related to a brand. And somebody from my gym purchased, I believe, a pre-workout. Purchased a pre-workout just because of that particular guy. He purchased it. We had this conversation, and he goes to me, I used it a few times. I'm not buying it again. He says it's just not good. Like he didn't like it. And my point is this: I believe this for quite some time. Um, you can sell almost anything once. I'm a firm believer in that.
Good
That
point.
I can convince you if I'm a good salesman or I'm a good bullshitter, which is almost the same.
Tricksterman.
Yeah, I can sell to you anything, but I can sell it to you only once because once you try it and you realize that it's not your cup of tea, it's not something that you're getting the benefits from it, you can still be a fan of mine, but it does not mean that you're going to purchase what I endorse because let's face it, if you're an average individual, you don't have to be a genius, then you know very well that the reason why I'm pushing the products is because I'm getting paid. That's the main reason why I'm pushing the products. And if I've been around for quite some time, then there is a good chance that I was pushing another brand before this brand, and possibly even more than one brand. And I might, when my contract is up, get to the other brand. So the consumer is not stupid. So I don't think that it's super necessary. I think that it depends on the type of brand that you have. So say, for example, if you have something like Celicore, like C4, right? So I think that it's a little bit trendier. It's a little bit more mainstream. It's a little bit cheaper. It tastes great. So there is market for it, obviously. And especially for 16, 17, 18-year-olds, that's a great, great product. And for somebody who hasn't tried anything else, that's phenomenal. Beginner pre-workout. So they're going to be purchasing it. And plus, it's half the price of a more premium product. But for another consumer, and he's going to listen probably to somebody like you, Justin, and he's going to listen to somebody like Robert. Why? Because you can actually explain each and every ingredient. I'm talking, of course, about premium products, because you can explain the mechanisms and how the ingredients work and how they come together and whatnot. So I think that they're going to listen to you. And now you don't have 1 million or 2 million followers, but it's a chain reaction. No, I can't speak for any other brands, but I can speak for Palm. When we started, we were selling tiny quantities, bare minimums, and we didn't have elite athletes representing us or anything like that. So it was basically us convincing people, trying to explain to them the formulas and whatnot of how good the product is. And again, you can sell once, but then you have a repeat buyer if your product is actually good. And that repeat buyer will go to his friend and his cousin and his relative. And that's, I think, the reason why, particularly my brand, took so long to get to where it is today. Because of word of mouth, because of a very, very slow build-up. But we've seen a lot of brands that exploded on the market. Perfect example would be AmFit. Remember that company?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
AmFit,
Here and gone.
yeah, AmFit came. I don't know if you know this, but they actually were owned by a major vitamin company out of China.
Yeah, it's like a pharmaceutical manufacturer.
It's a pharmaceutical
or something like
manufacturer or something like that. They were very big. I think they were number 1 or number 2 selling vitamin D in
big money
in China, and that's huge. So they had a lot of money, and I remember we were trying to sign Guy Cisternino back then because we were trying to take off, and we were only around for about 3 or 4 years, and we were, again, tiny company. So we tried to sign Guy, and I remember, because Guy and I are very friendly, I would say we are friends, and we were offering him X amount of money, and he turned us down. And he went with MFit that was offering him same money. They were not offering him more. And his explanation was not very pleasant for me to hear, but I understood. He said, I'm not going to go with a small brand when this company has billions probably behind them. And I think they were manufacturing themselves. Actually, they had a huge facility on Long Island. They bought a whole building on Long Island. So they were manufacturing. They got themselves sales reps, and they hired Guy Cisternino. And they hired Steve Lorias, who was top three classic physique competitor or superstar, and they hired somebody else. So they put together this amazing team. They had a huge booth at the Olympia. They came literally guns blazing. Guns blazing. They lasted a year.
Yeah,
They
yeah, they
lasted a year.
got slaughtered by some, a kid that's been doing YouTube videos on TikTok and build a following, and so it's not, I think that that's a great point because that was sort of like one of those.
Oh, and by the way,
it was like an oh shit.
We
moment.
have to add a little shit talking to it. They actually paid Price Plow and Ryan too. They were both promoting it, especially Price Plow. So, like I said, they were spending money left and right to build a brand. They still failed.
I think that they were like a cautionary tale for the entire space where I think the entire industry sort of took a step back and looked at what happened there, because in the old days that was the approach, right? And that would be how you would get, but the days were sort of dead of, where you'd open up a magazine and see a bodybuilder with a product next to him and go, oh, I'm going to buy No Explode because that's what I want to look like. Like those days are dead now, for the most part. So when it comes to like having the right influencer and things like that, it's almost like there's certain people that have a dedicated following, but there needs to be synergy with the brand more so now than there used to be. I think, Rob, that's one thing that you talk about where you want to have people that are at your gym, that are there for the events. You want to have people that support the brand. I know you've talked about things like this where problems come up, and it's like you want to have somebody that's more representative rather than just a figurehead, pushing your products, because you can find a lot of people to do that. So anyway, that's just my rant about influencers. I just think that it's changed a lot, and then also not having just throwing a ton of money at this problem and then running a bunch of ads. Because also what's happened in the last few years, especially once COVID hit, there are people that we've experienced this firsthand. You're going against people that realize they don't need to know anything about supplements. They don't need to know anything about fitness or the industry. They know e-com, they know Shopify, they know ads and stuff like that, and they can it can be a one-person team in their room and they can absolutely dominate. So the whole like interaction out there with being at the events and stuff like that is, I don't want to say it doesn't matter anymore, but it has changed the perspective in the space quite a bit. I think especially once COVID hit, it really, things haven't been exactly the same.
Agreed. Thomas, MFit with Guy's sister Nina, repping it for like 3 months. LOL.
Yeah, I never tried anything from them. I didn't have time to, so.
Chris, Robbie, are these guys in for my idea? Robbie, what is Chris's idea? Is this something we should say on air, or should we table it for an offline discussion?
I feel like just the hesitation means I'm probably in.
Robbie needs some Huperzine. He's in severe cognitive decline.
If Robert,
400 micrograms.
If Robert is hesitating, I feel like this is a good idea, and I feel like I'm in. But
yeah, no, Chris and I had a conversation. Yeah, I remember that like 2 days ago. It was actually pretty good.
Let us know, Chris.
Yeah, sure Chris just said, I'm pretty sure they're going to say yes, whatever it is.
That's... I have to up my fee.
I think it was a TV show. I think it was a TV show that he wanted, if we would pitch this to make a TV show. I remember, it was funny.
Okay, let's do a lighter-hearted question for a second. Another user submitted query. Favorite television shows?
ooh,
Well, I just watched Beef on Netflix.
what was it?
Yesterday. Beef. That was very good. Definitely worth checking out.
Is that that's a TV show? Like
It's a TV show. It's about road rage and the consequences of what can happen
Oh, nice.
when two people are in a very bad place in their life, and they get into this road rage situation, and neither one of them wants to let go, and they just continue fucking up each other's lives.
That sounds pretty cool. Really good reviews.
It's a really good show.
My favorite TV show. It's pretty. It's. There's maybe four. I think four. I could turn them on anytime and watch them, and I have watched them through multiple times. So Seinfeld, Cheers, Frasier, and Mad Men. All four of those. I have rewatched those. I've watched Mad Men through 3.5 times in its entirety. I love that show. Plus, it also helps me like tap into like that creative bullshit that I have to write sometimes for product pages for industry stuff when I need to get that mind right for that. But just those old school sitcoms, they're timeless. Nothing is topical or very. It's not for modern audiences or just touching on topics of the day. It's universal stuff that you can just talk about whenever.
Yeah, because also don't forget that most of these shows, they were not exactly politically correct. In this day and age, they would fucking get canceled.
Yeah, I can't remember what we were watching the other day, and I was like, "Whew, boy, lucky they came out with that when they did." Because like my thing is, we don't watch a lot of new stuff just because honestly, it's like if you go to Netflix, main page or whatever, there's just so much stuff on there that I like glaze over and I just put on something that I know that
it's garbage. Yeah, Sadie and I have the same problem. Every night we're trying to figure out, she said, there's nothing to watch. I said, well, there is. We just need to go back, 5 or 10 years. And so,
right, I'll watch something that I know we already like.
Right. So like there's so many classics that we've never seen. We were watching some Alfred Hitchcock movie with Sean Connery and I don't remember the girl, but it's called Marnie. And it's great. We've only watched the first 40 minutes of it, but it is a great it's like a classic Hitchcock kind of slow burn thriller, which anything horror movies I love. And the original Psycho is cemented as one of the first horror movies my dad ever showed me when I was a kid. So that and all the original Universal monster movies from the 30s and 40s were awesome.
Because I just got, and I told Rob about this, I watched The Last of Us The Last of Us I played on PlayStation 10 years ago, right? And I remember they had been trying to turn it into a movie or a TV show for years, and it was like, it's considered by a lot of people like the greatest video game ever because of the story, and it's nothing unique. It's about a zombie apocalypse and people survive, and so there's nothing new there, but the story was so good. And I was like, man, I don't really want them to turn this into a show because it's gonna suck, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually HBO came out with it in January of this year, and man, they nailed that show. Holy shit, that show was so good. So that was the first show in a long time where we were like every week, on Sunday we were like, let's watch that show, where it was like must watch TV. Last of Us was phenomenal. My all-time favorite show is probably Dexter.
Oh god, you and I talked about that when Shane and I first went through and watched it. It was so great, and then
it gets weird, and I remember going and rewatching it. I can tolerate the shitty parts of it a little bit better now, but like I can go and rewatch. I've rewatched that series.
I still didn't. I didn't watch the last one, the one that they rebooted the show recently. I mean, I heard some mixed reviews about it and mixed opinions, but for some reason I didn't want to watch it because, I mean, I wasn't a fan of how they ended the original one.
Yeah, the way they ended, like I love the show, and how you kind of, it's like Star Wars for me, where I just pretend that the really fucked up things like didn't happen.
You ignore any Disney Star Wars shit. Right, it ended with George Lucas, and then it goes into the expanded universe novels. That's Star Wars for me.
Like if I mean, I don't have kids, but I assume like if you have a kid and he just does something really dumb, you just go, oh, I love you anyway, kind of thing. Like that's how I feel.
No, so we make her sleep outside with the coyotes.
Well, I know you. I'm just saying, like, I'm assuming that's what
people with a soul don't do that with their kids. Sandy and I are soulless.
But so I ignore the downturns because there's so many great things about Dexter. But I can rewatch. Yeah. Speaking of, that's the only kid I got. He's interested in what I'm doing. But Last of Us is definitely the last show that I was like, man, that was awesome.
The 4th season of Dexter, I think, with John Lithgow.
Oh,
that's
so good.
Good.
Might be. You know what show that I liked it? It was very hyped up, but I never got to love it, is Breaking Bad.
I'm actually watching that right now. I'd never seen it. So this is funny. You'll appreciate this. I tried to watch it before, and I hated his wife and the other guy's wife so bad that I just shut it off. I said, I don't want to watch this show. So actually, we just started rewatching it recently. So
I think it's a good show. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I think it had ups and downs. Like with Dexter, you pretty much had a very even. Yes, I mean, fourth season was absolutely amazing, but in reality, the entire Dexter, series was absolutely amazing up until the end. But other than that, I mean, it was just perfect. Breaking Bad, I felt it was like a roller coaster. Sometimes good, sometimes actually even boring.
yeah,
It was very good, but it gets so dark that it is hard. I watched it through a year and a half ago. I watched all the season because I never saw it when it was on, live each week. I saw it over the course of a couple of months. It's very good, and it's a fitting conclusion. But like you said, Robbie, there's certain parts to the last couple of seasons where it not jumps the shark, but it gets too the verisimilitude of the series. Like if you get pulled out of it, you're not
What'd
it's
you
not
just
believable anymore. Huh?
say the similitude.
Verisimilitude.
You can't if you're drinking bourbon, you can't say words like that.
I am wild turkey rare breed.
Not allowed to say stuff like that because like so what happened with us was my fiance, she's a cop, right? So I was like my favorite show, besides Dexter, one of the best shows that I've seen is The Wire, right? So I said,
it was so good.
I said, you got to see The Wire. She had never seen it before, so we watched The Wire, and it's just like one of those shows that probably wouldn't make it today because it's too thought provoking. It's too takes too long to get going. People would probably dismiss it too early. But so we watched The Wire, and then after we watched The Wire, I was like, well, where do we go after you watch The Wire? Right? So we watched The Sopranos. I had never seen The Sopranos.
That's a great one.
And she had never seen The Sopranos. So we watched The Sopranos. So after watching The Wire and Sopranos, I was like, what the hell else do we
I
go
still
to?
haven't watched The Sopranos. I actually want to watch it. It's fucking, 7 seasons, 8 seasons?
So we just went through it, and it starts off pretty slow. Like, there was a point of it where I was like, I just don't get it. And then, like, somewhere around, like, season 3 of it, I remember, like, saying to her, I was like, this show is fucking awesome.
Yeah, it is.
And
I love
then-
mob stuff, so
yeah,
I was
and then
right there with it.
It was just kind of, and not that I don't need a show to just, like, I get it, the building of characters and building of stories, but there was really just not much happening, like in the whole thing. But I'm like, okay, I'll keep riding this out. And we finished it, and I was like, holy shit. And then I was like, well, what do we do now? So we started Breaking Bad, because I'm like, everything now is probably going to suck compared to these, 2 shows. It's hard to sort of follow that up.
Go for Mad Men if you haven't seen Mad Men.
I have heard that. So there's
love
Mad
that
Men,
show.
and
I love
it was Michael from Gloxon. He was telling me Succession on HBO.
I've
He
heard
said-
good things about that. I have not
Yeah,
seen
it's
it.
very popular.
Yeah, he said those 2. Did you see Mad Men, Robbie?
Yeah, I didn't watch Mad Men also. Robert was making fun of me for that.
So good.
For all the stuff that you've seen, and you haven't seen Sopranos or Mad Men.
I haven't seen it. Yeah. Breaking Bad, I was also late to the party, as well as Dexter. I only seen them a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, Breaking Bad was good. It's so dark. I don't want to go back and rewatch it. I can handle some dark stuff, but there's certain stuff I just.
So, like Thomas said, the first 4 seasons of Dexter are amazing, and that's like the thing that most people say. I will
There's
say
a critical
this,
turning point in season 4. We'll leave it at that. Yeah.
if you go right, but if you go back and watch season 7 of that show is so freaking good with the Russians and
Yes.
oh man, that
Yes.
season is really good.
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
because I think, you know what, if you look at it, season 5, right, of Dexter, it wasn't a bad season. It wasn't bad. It just 4 kind of raised the bar so far
Yeah.
that made 5 look like, average, but it wasn't. It was actually a very good season. That's why I said, throughout the entire series, Dexter is a phenomenal show. From
Was
start.
that the one with Julia Stiles or with Colin Hanks?
Yes, I think Julia
Julia
Stiles.
Stiles, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that one was fine. The one
I
with
liked it.
Colin
I
Hanks
liked
is such
all
a
of them.
bad actor, in my opinion. I did not
That
like
season
that.
was.
But
I
you
skipped
know
that
what?
season. I skipped season 6.
When
I
you have
rewatched it.
John Lithgow, who is one of the finest actors around,
Mhm.
playing such an amazing part and doing it with such fucking class. He's one of those guys that kind of like you love to hate. And his performance actually, I don't know why, even though it's a completely different characters, but he reminds me a little bit of Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. You
Super
know,
creepy.
very, very creepy because you see this, older gentleman who is so fucking dangerous. You don't see big muscles and, flawless hair and six pack or anything like that. You just see somebody who's an older guy, but when actors of this caliber deliver, they deliver. And that's the reason why the Julia Stiles one kind of got a little bit of a bad rap. But the truth is, it was actually a very good season, and I'll take that season over any Breaking Bad season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And these, when I'm in the office, can you come home and take care of these kids as long as you're listening now? Can you come home from work early? Because they're about to, whenever I'm in this office, the two cats come in here and they just start like WWE trying to kill each other. And they're about to start doing it right now. And it's going to be like, it's going to sound like somebody's being murdered.
That'll be awesome.
Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders is awesome.
I liked it, and then I kind of tapped out when they started getting more of like the political stuff. Not that they were commenting on politics, but when he started having like government aspirations and that political figure came in with the whole Nazi riffs and stuff, I started. That's when it got too highfalutin for me, and I just kind of.
They probably ended that show at the right time because it's like they're like, okay, usually like 5 seasons for shows anymore. It's like,
yeah, no, they ended it on the right note. I heard that there might be a movie. A movie would be fine. I think movie would be okay. In terms of series, Banshee is my favorite.
Wait, Cobra Kai. I forgot about Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai is so good.
I fucking love that show. Oh my god.
That's so good. And that is a way to reboot or continue a 30-year-old IP. So Cobra Kai and Top Gun Maverick are the way you continue a legacy IP in the modern era. And it's made by people that love the franchise and want to keep doing it.
I think Cobra Kai is actually more popular than Karate Kid was.
Oh, yeah.
Even though Karate Kid is considered this classic movie, but at the same time, Cobra Kai's popularity, because if you think about it, Karate Kid was for kids. I mean, the kids, teenagers, they love that movie. Cobra Kai is loved by everyone. Yeah. Everyone loves that show. You have guys in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s who, grew up watching the original Karate Kid. They relate to the story. But Cobra Kai definitely kind of elevated it and took over exactly precisely at that moment where it was needed.
Well, you know what's funny about that show? What I loved about it was, so when you're a kid and you're watching Karate Kid, you're like, oh, this poor kid's getting bullied, and he beats the bullies. And then you get a little bit older and you experience life a little bit more, and you're like, Daniel was kind of a little bitch. And he kind of, I think I would have kicked his ass too. And then you're kind of like, I get it now. I get why they beat him up. And then, the way Cobra Kai plays it out, they're like, oh, Daniel wasn't the innocent victim of the whole thing.
Kind of an
you're
ass.
Kind of like, You're kind of like, yeah, he's kind of a prick.
Yeah.
So I like how they lean into that. I love that show.
For all people tuning in Supplement Snacks, that is Justin's better half. So go subscribe to her. Check out her Instagram channel for yummy, tasty supplement snack recipes.
She does Instagram and social media stuff way better than I do. That's for sure.
Cobra Kai
and
dies.
She has some phenomenal recipes for pollen protein. I'm like phenomenal. So
outstanding. I want to rewatch that show every time I hear an 80s song. Johnny has some of the best one-liners in that show, man.
Probably my favorite character on TV.
The soundtrack is great. I mean, they nailed it. It's the right amount of 80s nostalgia, enough cheese, enough callbacks to the original series, and the way they kind of tie everything in together. I'm excited for this final season coming up. I cannot wait.
We know when, and this gives you a little window into my world, but when that show hooked me was when he was outside the pizza plate or outside the mini mart, and that group of kids, and they're such pricks, and you think he's an adult, he's just gonna kind of take the high road, but he just kicks his shit out. I was like, oh, I'm in.
It's so great.
I respect this.
Ancient One, Johnny and Kreese are awesome. Yes. Yeah. they are outstanding. Supplement snacks. When a pollen protein survives longer than a week, I have recipes. It doesn't last long around here. So good.
So not to do a shameless plug for Robbie here, but Robert, a pollen protein. What's your go-to flavor if you're going to use a pollen's protein?
Chocolate, just because I love the chocolate.
The Dutch chocolate?
Yeah, the Dutch chocolate is. I still think it's probably the best tasting chocolate I've ever tried, and I've tried, probably 50 to 60 different chocolate proteins over my tenure in the industry, which isn't that long, but I've had the pleasure and privilege to try a bunch of different proteins, a lot. By far my favorite chocolate protein. And that's not just because I've been saying that since before Robbie and I were doing anything official together with content for the brand.
Yeah, that sounds familiar because I said the same thing about the peanut butter.
The cookie, the peanut butter cookie is great. Caramel macchiato, super solid.
Yeah.
If I have to pick one and just ride with it forever, it's going to be the Dutch chocolate. But I haven't tried the Kiev cake yet. I need to try that one.
The blackberry one?
The blackberry cheesecake. Yeah.
So
I got to try that one.
We absolutely wrecked.
Somebody hasn't sent that to me.
Blackberry cheesecake.
Somebody still hasn't sent that to me yet. It's fine.
Oh, asshole.
You can't take your Price Plow residual check and go buy a tub?
So
my name was removed off all the articles. I don't get any residuals.
I'm going to share some information that nobody knows, but that chocolate's going to have a little brother in cream of rice.
Really?
Yeah, we're coming out with cream of rice in that chocolate flavor.
Oh, man. I might actually eat cream of rice. Huh. Yeah, I love... So you got the blackberry cheesecake. Just order some right now while we're sitting here. It is... That tub lasted a week, maybe. I don't know. I think she was going to do a recipe for it and it was gone.
The wild strawberry is good. I like mixing that with Greek yogurt and throwing some frozen, like a triple berry mix in there with some chocolate chips. That is a really good dinner.
I think that I tried that recipe, but I tried it with ruby chocolate instead. Which
that one works well too.
That kind of had a similar effect.
So what other, Robbie, if you use proteins from another brand, which has anything because I know you guys make such phenomenal proteins. I know kind of part of the game is you like to try.
I try from other companies. I do try from other companies, and like I said, I don't mind saying which one I like. And first of all, I don't like a lot because the thing is that most, especially when it comes to isolate, most of them are very watery texture, and I don't like it. Mm-hmm. So the ones that I do like, surprisingly, Evogen has an isolate product that, as far as I know, is not very popular. I don't even know if they still have that flavor. So the flavor is called Snoop waffle, which is very, I think it's from Switzerland or something like that. It's served on Swiss Airlines. It's kind of like little chocolatey candy type of things. So it reminds me a little bit of caramel, I think. But it's very, very good flavor, and I think they nailed it. But, it's an American market, so I don't think that it does very well over here. But that one is very nice, very creamy, and tastes absolutely delicious. So that one I like. Other than that, I actually like Ghost protein, but I like definitely not Oreo. Oreo I did not like. But I do like Nutter Butter.
Me too. Nutter
Butter
really
is really, really solid. Chips Ahoy I liked. I can't say that I loved it just because I'm not a big fan of Chips Ahoy in general, but Nutter Butter, because everything that peanut butter and stuff like that, I like. So I think the Nutter Butter is very, very solid. I really enjoyed that. That was a very solid flavor.
Yeah. The original cereal milk flavor and the peanut butter cereal milk, it's been a hot minute since I've tried any Ghost proteins, but the original two flavors that they launched with, the peanut butter cereal milk and the regular cereal milk, were out of this world good.
They're hot. The hot cocoa protein one that they came out with. It's very sweet, but I absolutely love that one. That one, it's got little marshmallows in it. Phenomenal. But I think, Rob, what you said I think that was really what drew me to you guys' protein, and then our whole conversation where I started to push back against the isolate thing, was because I would drink isolates because that was what the market was being flooded with at the time, and I didn't like how they were.
Well,
super...
I remember you made a post or something like that, or comment. Somebody, you see, I gotta refresh my memory because I think somebody said that isolate is the best or something like that, and then you kind of lost it, and you said that it's not, and how you prefer the 50-50, and you prefer the mix with casein and stuff like that, and that isolate is not necessarily superior. But I remember you either made a post about it or you commented, but it had to do with Apollo Nutrition because it had to do with the mix of 50-50. I just don't remember what exactly it was, but it was definitely you that said something.
Yeah, I think because I just kept hearing it so often that, sometimes if one or two people makes a comment, I don't really think it's something to get, too crazy about. But when you hear the same narrative driven over and over again, and the only thing I was saying about it was stop saying that isolate is superior. Like, if you want to say isolate is great and casein is great, and if you want to talk about how the concentrates that were in the past that were like 34% protein, if you want to say that they're inferior, then fine. But when you start saying that, an 80% concentrate is garbage compared to a 90% isolate and the casein, I'm like, that is absolutely not true. Because I'm like, has anybody, because I would hear all this stuff, and what I did was I was reading about the processing. This is before I was, friends with any brand owners or anything. I wanted to know how whey protein was made. And as I'm going through it, I'm literally, I'm emailing with farmers and these people at manufacturing plants. And as I'm like learning all this stuff, I was like, what the fuck is everybody talking about? Like, why are we saying that isolates that go through a heavier processing experience and it's removing potentially beneficial, when people talk about colostrum, how popular colostrum is, and all this stuff that's in milk, how beneficial it is, then why are we saying that milk more in its closer form to nature is somehow inferior because it has lactose in it? I'm like, but if we're removing lactose, so anyway, long story short, I didn't like how the texture of isolates were just super watery and they were super light. They've gotten a lot better, but then I remember finding like your protein. It might have been Eddie or somebody that turned me onto it, and I was like, "Nah, this is what I'm talking about." Plus, I love casein protein, so that's what springboarded the whole thing. Because I was like, let's just stop saying your isolate is king and that everything else sucks. I was like, because it's just not true.
So here's a true story. It's actually, you're gonna find it amusing. I don't know if I told Robert or not. Going back maybe 5-6 years ago, there was a supplement store owned by an IFBB pro in New Jersey, and we got to talk. And at that point, I think we were like in 2 stores, if that. And he said that, yeah, overall, your line is not bad, but your protein is not good. And I was like, what do you mean it's not good? He goes, it has casein in it. And I was like, so? He goes, casein makes you retain water. It's not good for dieting. It will make you hold water and make you look a little puffy. So,
if anything, casein is good when you're dieting because it makes you fuller longer. But whatever, keep pushing that narrative.
it just shows, like, you know what? It's still, like I said earlier, there is still a lot of education that needs to be done. And unfortunately, and this is the difference between paid athletes and influencers who will, I'm not making any accusations, but let's be honest, most of them, not saying all of them, but most of them will say anything because they're getting paid. That's the reason I guess why I respect, Branch Warren, who is with us, because before he signed a contract, before anything, he actually wanted to try the products. He wanted to see the products. He wanted to experience the products. And I think that's how it should be. And that's the difference between somebody in our space that when you have somebody with knowledge who can actually explain to people, educate people on ingredients, on benefits, then you're not going to hear all these alpha GPC will give you a stroke, and caffeine will kill you, and this one will kill your kidneys, and so on and so on. Because, people will believe anything when you say it with conviction. If you can convince anyone, especially if you're very sure about what you're saying, when the delivery is very positive, even if it's in fact negative. But I think it comes down to education, and we do know people that are saying casein is good only before nighttime, and casein will make you retain water, and casein is inferior to isolate. These things are still flying a lot around, and I always said it's we are the brand owners, the people connected to the industry, the experts of the industry like yourselves. This is actually our responsibility. We have to educate, because the thing is that if it's not us, then who else?
Yeah, I think there's something that happens in this space that one of the, I would say, biggest problems is science is not marketing, right? But we use it as marketing in this space because it lends credence to what we're about to say or our products. But whenever we talk about if Robert and I, if we're citing a study or someone asks us about an opinion about an ingredient, what we end up saying is this may do this, it seems to do this, what we know so far. But that you don't say that in marketing material. What you say in marketing material is this does this, you get that point across. So inherently, using science as marketing is the complete opposite of what is intended for to begin with, because you remove all context when you're trying to get across marketing. So I like that we have scientific backed ingredients and stuff like that, but it turns into a weird dynamic when you use words in marketing that science doesn't allow for. So you manipulate science to sort of fit the narrative, and not saying that companies shouldn't do certain things or point to studies or use science-backed ingredients, but I just think that at the heart of the whole entire issue is this weird bastardization of science that we kind of do in this space.
Agreed. Speaking of science, Sandeep says, some people say, I will not name it. I'm curious now.
Name it.
Send me an email or just reply in the comments below, Sandeep. And which everybody listening in right now, keep the questions coming. Comments, grievances, gripes, cocktail concoctions, whatever you have. We'll answer everything and anything before we close out. That Suboxone 500 milligrams is over, and it should be 100 milligrams. Funny thing.
Do you have a Suboxone article?
I have a Suboxone news piece I wrote for Shane on Stacked 7 months ago that says the human study used 500 milligrams, 2 capsules daily for a total of 1,000 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Suboxone is very expensive, and Joey and the guys at Glaxon use 100. It's a GABA antagonist. Joey and I have talked about it on a couple of podcasts. Go back and see the couple of streams I've done with Joey, and him and I are going to line up when I had to cancel the one we had scheduled a couple of weeks ago for some personal stuff that came up. But we're going to go back into that again. Suboxone is a very cool ingredient.
I agree.
Does a lot of cool stuff. As a highlight, increases BDNF levels, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor. As I say, it's an important protein in the brain, impacts growth, development, differentiation of neurons, plays a crucial role in how the nervous system processes changes and adapts to things it encounters. You can buy it as a standalone thing. It is also in Mind Games from Apollo Nutrition. And I believe Serious Nutrition Solutions, SNS, also sells it as a standalone supplement in 300 milligram dosages. So,
yep, I remember. I think it was Joey and Glaxon, and then I remember. I don't know if there was it might have been supply side or something like that, where all of a sudden I started to hear that a lot of companies were going to be using Suboxone. So I went and got Suboxone from Nootropics Depot or something like that.
That's where I bought mine.
And I think that part of the issue with nootropics and most just the general public is they want the caffeine effect, where nootropics aren't meant to work that way in a lot of ways, right? Some of this stuff, Neuro 365 is a really good example where a lot of this stuff is chronic usage, it's long-term usage, but you're talking to and this isn't necessarily like a criticism, but people want the immediate results. People want the pre-workout experience where you take it once and you go, this did this, I had this experience. And some of this stuff is just not designed that way, where if you take 2 pills of Suboxone once, I don't know what that's going to do, for someone.
So I can crack the code who said that easily, actually.
Let's hear it.
The truth is that before putting Suboxone in Mind Games, I met with obviously the person who is with an ingredient company. We actually discussed Suboxone, and just like Robert's article said, 500 milligram. That was the study dose of Suboxone. That was actual clinical studies, human studies. So it supports the 500 milligram. Because it's a palm, and I like to do things right. One of the companies that does that. There was no brainer that we're going to use the full dose of 500 milligrams.
Pun intended.
Yeah. So what Joey's using 100 milligram, it's not necessarily bad, but it's not the 500 milligram that was studied, that has the human study behind it. But to figure out who said it, it's actually very easy, because it had to be only one person, and that's Ben from Price Plow. Why? Because I use 500, so obviously it's overdosed by his standards. Joey is using 100, and that's exactly the dose that he stated.
Oh, so Joey told him to say that? Or I don't want to say Joey told him to say that.
No, Ben.
There was the influence
Ben said
of
it basically to kiss Glaxon's ass.
That's what I mean.
And to take a swing at me. So it's pretty simple. It had to be banned 100%.
Yeah, I mean, if you say, that's what I mean. Obviously, I love Joey. He doesn't do stuff.
He
like
would
that.
never. Actually, we had a great conversation. He's a great guy, extremely knowledgeable, extremely smart. And again, using 100 milligram. Look, I remember Robert and I talked about saffron, and we talked about, I believe, 30 milligram dose being optimal. Right now, Gorilla Mind is using 15. Is it underdosed? It's not underdosed, and it's also an energy drink. It's still there. It's still probably gonna, give the effects that you're looking for. So 100 milligram of Suboxone. Look, Suboxone is there. It will give you some benefits, 100%. Is it the studied 500 milligram? No, it's not. So there is nothing wrong with doing 100 milligram, but to say that 500 milligram, which is actually a studied dose in human studies, and to say that it's overdose, there is only one reason one person would say it, for obvious reasons, to kiss ass.
Well, wasn't it? It was 500 twice a day. So
twice a day, yeah.
But this is also Robert, what you just brought up. This is what I always say, like when people ask me the underdose question, because sometimes it comes up, and what I usually say is, you brought up Morphogen. That was a great example. Morphogen was using 100 milligrams. So we already know that Ben doesn't underdose anything. So there's a choice. He made a choice to put it in there. So when I tell people like, people like to get outlandish, and they see one thing and they make a snap judgment, and then there's comments. But I'm like, take the brand on a macro level, look at what they do. Like, for example, Glaxon, they had the proprietary blend of their amino acid concept, the MyoSeq, right? And people were like, how can it be a proprietary blend? I was like, listen, they don't proprietary blend anything. So it's not like they're a chronic proprietary blend user. I said in this case, their reasoning was they think that they've come across something that is unique, and they don't want other people to know about it. Now, there's plenty of people that have said that in the past that were full of shit, and we know that. But if you look at their products, everything is fully transparent and dosed and stuff like that. So you're like, okay, now whether you agree with it or not, but it's not a chronic problem where they're trying to cover up something. So when you look at somebody, if a dose of something is different than what you're used to, there could be a reason. Like, there's certain ingredients. Dynamine is a good one. We've all used Dynamine a lot. A lot of people have used Dynamine. I say this all the time. Like, sometimes too much Dynamine gives you that negative effect. Like, I've found a really good sweet spot. Like, if I make a formula with Dynamine in it, I'll usually use less than that, mega dose, because the mega dose for a lot of people is probably not going to feel really good, and then it's like, well, you can always take more, also. So sometimes there's reasoning, behind underdosing, and there's very rarely like one dose of something. That was like, people asked me when I made the app, they're like, can you put the clinical dose in the app? I was like, there is really no clinical doses of this stuff. It's always like a huge range and studies and this. I was like, so it seems like a simple concept, and we have generally recognized, ranges that we know we need to be in, but there's never like just this is the dose. Well, I don't want to say never, but very rarely.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a scale. So some people could get by, because I reached out to Steve at SNS when I said, hey, you guys have 300 milligrams here. You got the study. I know he is usually a person that is serious about sourcing quality raw materials, making really good formulas. I just did an article about their Kidney Assist XT on the supplement engineer site, just because kidney health, there's very few companies that actually release, like Apollon has Kidney Kindness. Some other companies have organ formulas. SNS always does a bang up job with stuff. And this article was not sponsored or anything. I just wanted to put up a kidney article for a brand that I'm not working with. If I write an article about an Apollon product, people can say, well, you're friends with Robbie. All right, so just, we're going to cut all the bullshit, and I'm going to recognize and give credit where credit's due for another company doing some great shit in the industry.
Yeah, I love SNS stuff. They always make good stuff.
Yeah, so I reached out to Steve with the Suboxone when it came. I said, Steve, what's going on? It's 500. He said, well, from our internal testing, people that we've, the consumers, because they beta test a lot of stuff, said we found that 300 was kind of the right amount that we want. And so I won't discount that 300 could be effective for some people. We don't have the research to show it yet. It's an expensive ingredient. I'm not going to discount Joey's knowledge, because he is one of the smartest SOBs in our industry. So if he's putting it in there, he's putting it in there for a reason. Either it's a cost to benefit ratio, or in combination with the other stuff, he's got a sweet sauce of something going on there. Now, I've used Goon Mode. I like Goon Mode a lot. They're a stim-based nootropic, where Neuro 365 is more kind of like a multivitamin for your brain. Everything I've used from Glaxon, even they're going back to our earlier conversation, Protos Whey, their milk chocolate. If you look at like a milk chocolate kind of flavor,
it's so good.
Milk chocolate's really, really, really solid. So if you like a lighter, chocolatey milk kind of flavor, go for that. You want darker chocolate, richer chocolate, go with Apollon Dutch chocolate.
Yeah, Apollon is more like a cocoa. It's like it literally is like cocoa powder.
Yeah,
and, it is just so good. But yeah, I agree. The Glaxon Protos, and that's a cool concept that they used in Glaxon Protos too.
Sharp coffee is useless.
Yeah, so speaking of...
I'm so glad I'm not on social media, so I don't have to see this stuff.
Robbie, I didn't even know that you had this. So I just found this out the other day. I can't keep up with what you're doing, man. Where did this come from? It was I just talked to you 2 days
with
before.
coffee. The funny thing is, it was sold out almost instantly. We just actually restocked it now. But Sharp Coffee came. I wanted to do a coffee product. Everybody has coffee in the morning, and I saw a couple of different ones with mushrooms. So we tried that. I wanted to experiment that, but it tastes horrible. It tastes absolutely horrible, especially for instant coffee. So I like to drink. If I drink instant coffee, I usually will use some type of creamer. Usually it's hazelnut or coconut or something like that. And that's pretty much my quickly go-to. So I tried that. Even the creamer could not mask the mushrooms. It was impossible because they were so earthy and so rough. So it didn't work. So I was thinking that in the morning, what people want to do when they go to work and not specifically to work out. I mean, you can work out on coffee too. I was I wanted to do something strong, but not crazy strong, like a strong coffee. So this one has Colombian coffee. It's about 345 milligram per serving. And then on top of it, it has L-tyrosine at 2 grams. It has alpha GPC at 600 milligram. And it has Cognatic at 100 milligram. So, I mean...
Cognatic is Neurofactor.
Neurofactor, yeah. Neurofactor. So basically, I mean, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Ben Kane obviously talks out of his ass, and he can only say these things in a little groups that he has for probably like 5 people. To me personally, he would never dare to say, but I'm definitely gonna make sure to ask him that in person. I would love it. I would love for him to say it to my face.
Did you ever consider? Because I know you're good friends with Matt Nickerson. Did you consider doing self-low coffee? There was another friend of ours. He came out with a self-low infused coffee, and man, it came out phenomenal. But it is obviously very expensive.
Yeah, this one is actually moderately priced. So there is an issue with self-low, and Matt knows about it. It tastes like shit.
Tastes terrible. Yeah.
It tastes absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So when it comes, I like the ingredient. I like the ingredient a lot. I think
of course.
I think it's phenomenal. In capsule form, I mean, I've tried it. I was among the first one, like I said before, that tried the product. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I will try to use it in powders in the near future, but to be honest with you, it's very, very hard to mask. I mean, when it comes to the nastiest ingredients, when it comes to powders, probably lion's mane comes to mind because that's not very pleasant. Then you have Pico 2. But we managed to mask Pico 2 great in Lionheart. I mean, you don't feel shit. But then the two that are going to be a serious challenge would be obviously Selflow 6, which would be tough. And the worst one is that is even impossible to do is vinpocetine. Vinpocetine is like untouchable. That's just too nasty. So sharp coffee is very popular. People really like it. Justin, you drink coffee?
Oh yeah, I love coffee.
So I'll ship it to you tomorrow.
Okay. Because I went on there and I see somehow I missed it and I see this coffee thing and I was like, oh man, I was
a certain dickhead's not gonna get Kiev cake because he's just being too mean to me. So fuck him. But you're gonna get coffee. In fact, you know what? You're gonna get 2 coffees, one for you and one for Robert. But
oh man,
yeah. But in terms of that, fuck him. He's a chicken shit, little ugly face motherfucker that nobody gives a fuck about, and that's somebody that assumes the role of being industry expert
nerd, industry nerd.
No, he's not talking about you.
No, that title belongs to you.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking.
He's not talking about you.
Yeah,
we're talking about me.
Why would I call you an ugly motherfucker?
I mean, I've got big eyes and a pointy nose. I've got the Shinetsky schnoz.
You know what? By
fully aware what I look like.
Try to put your photo next to Ben Kane, and all of a sudden you're gonna look like Brad Pitt. And everybody's quiet.
Oh no, I was reading. Sorry, I was reading a comment that John made about, and it kind of got me off on a tangent because I was thinking about do you guys put? I hate the whole protein and it's a great concept. It's a good way for I think a lot of people to get some protein. People put collagen in their coffee, but I see
what you did there. It's a good way to get your way.
There you go. Damn it! But I just don't like to do it, and I don't like it.
No, there's a purity to black coffee.
So. I do what Rob does. I do some creamer. Actually, Kristen, she's like a barista. She does all kinds of wild stuff. So I just stay out of the way. I just drink it.
Speaking of Kristen, she used Neuro 365 for a month and enjoyed it. I've also really enjoyed OptiTune's Lion's Mane NRG Plus. Mm-hmm. I've used OptiTune's greens before when they sent me some stuff to try. That was good.
Yeah, OptiTune is Jason from Muscle Sport. It's like one of his passion project sort of side brands that they do over there. They make a lot of cool stuff. And because I know you and I talked about it on the podcast quite a few times because Jason and I have always been good friends and he'll send some stuff over to try and it's nothing elaborate. It's usually very small products and they use a lot of nootropics and that Lion's Mane NRG is a really cool one. It's got some Lion's Mane, some caffeine. It's got can't remember what else is in there that's really cool. But it's got when you look at the formula, Robert, it's like one of those things where you look and you go, oh, I like that. Kind of nothing crazy, but you go, that's a cool little twist.
Pull it up and see if I can find it. Oh, OptiTune just pulled up oil and gas stuff and glass coatings.
Maybe he's sold. Maybe that's why I haven't talked to him in a while. Maybe he's sold out and he's living on an island somewhere.
There we go. Net Nutri. Okay, this seller does not display the supplement facts.
Did Price Plot really say that sharp coffee is useless and I would prefer Starbucks?
No. He didn't say it. Dan said it in his close group that he has that, that nobody can see. He would never dare to say it in open.
That's true.
Yeah, come on.
Oh,
He just didn't know that he didn't suspect that it's going to leak out to me, and that's it. But,
It's a muscle sports website now. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
right.
Kristen.
They did kind of absorb, because they absorbed Kodiak into one, because that Kodiak was one of their brands, and then so they probably consolidated everything rather than trying to run 3 different websites and all that other good stuff.
Okay. I will pull that up then and see it. While I'm doing that, thank you for the pointers, Kristen. I appreciate that. Speaking of cocktails, I made our first old fashions. Big fan. That is my go-to cocktail. I've made, I don't know how many hundreds, or it might be 1,000 by now, for depending on when Sandy's faculty parties we hosted here, and with some of our friends that live up the street that used to be faculty members at the school she teaches at. They love old fashions and bourbon and scotch and all things whiskey.
And that's your love language is making old fashions for people, I've noticed.
Oh yeah, man. That is cooking for 'em, making old fashions, or any a dirty Pollock. Making some dirty Pollocks is good, which is a riff on a White Russian. Is one of my grandpa's favorite things was the White Russian. But we're Pollocks, we're Polish, so we've used Polish vodka and some other stuff in it to kind of tweak it.
I don't have the patience. I'm just we'll do one, and I'm I'm just gonna pull.
Yeah, just give me bourbon now. Bourbon and sugar and ice. My favorite, if I like a daily driver bourbon, as much as that term is used with supplements, I'll use that for bourbon, your budget bourbon or your daily bourbon that you can always find on the shelf. Knob Creek 9-year, 100 proof. It's a good balance of flavor. You can sip it neat. You can sip it on our block of ice. You can use it in old fashions. It holds up. It's got a rich, kind of brown sugary, kind of a slight peanut flavor because it's part of the Jim Beam distillery. And usually has a note of peanuts flavors to where if you use an Old Forester, that's more synonymous with banana flavors in their bourbons in general. So if I'm going for just one, I'm going to choose one bourbon. It's going to be Knob Creek 9-year, 100 proof. I love that bourbon. It's great. I always have a handle of it at the house, no matter what. No matter how many other bourbons I amass, that is always in my cabinet. If you want to get a little bit more expensive, you don't have to, because there's so many great bourbons between that $20 to $60 range, as you and I have talked about numerous times before, Justin. Mm-hmm. But if you want to go a little higher end, you want to try something else, Old Forester 1920, the Prohibition style, which is what is right here in this glass, is out.
We got some right there, right behind me.
Yeah, that's great. Wild Turkey Rare Breed.
Also, some of that right behind me.
Also phenomenal.
We
something like really Buffalo Trace or Eagles Rare. You could, if you don't want a super strong bourbon, but that is such an easy sipper. And it's a lower proof. It's only a 90 octane, so you don't need. I wouldn't use that in an old fashioned. I like 100 proof and then above for an old fashioned. Anything lower than 100 proof, I kind of just like that either neat or with a block of ice.
We haven't even really talked since we came back from Louisville. I mean, I remember I sent you some pictures, I think, when we were at the distilleries, and I think I sent you a picture of all the bourbon that I bought when we
yeah.
Because we were there for 5 days. That was a little bit too long, actually.
A little too much bourbon.
A little bit too long. But yeah, I got a couple bottles of Blanton's this week. I was super excited about that.
I still have yet to get one of those in my collection. I've enjoyed it numerous times, but I don't have my personal Blanton's bottle.
Well, we don't get anything here in South Carolina, so
neither do we.
It took me a few months of spending a lot of money at some local places, and then the other day, one of the liquor store owners, he's like, "Hey, I got one bottle." We had a few people on the list. He's like, "I called you. You were the first one. I called you." I was like, "I'll be there in 30 seconds." So,
oh yeah.
And then the next day, I got another bottle from somebody else. So.
Outstanding. Green chili tacos.
Have you ever
That's all I have to add about the Louisville trip.
Have you ever been to Whiskey Road, Louisville?
I drove through it when I was driving to Apollon in 2020, October of 2020 for the seminar, or
Yeah.
2021.
No, I think 2020.
Mm.
Yeah, whatever. Either
So
2020 or 2021 when I drove 24 hours to go to that thing.
so
I
the one
passed through the
place,
Bluegrass Parkway, but I did not get a chance to stop at any distilleries.
all you needed to know is there's one place that we went to literally like the same place for dinner, call it dinner. Basically every night we were there. It's called Merle's, and there's two things about it that you'll absolutely love. First of all, the green chili tacos that she's talking about, these green chili pork tacos,
Yeah.
they are absolutely phenomenal, to the point where she bought the green chili jam basically, and then put it on everything. We ordered a bunch of it. But so there's this place. So if you go there, you get, the way it works out is you pay X amount of money for a pour of bourbon, 1.25 ounces, right? No matter what.
Weird.
Well, here, I'll get to the rest of it. No matter what bourbon you order, for a 2-ounce pour, it costs another $2, no matter what.
That's not bad at all.
So no matter if you order something that's $50 for 1.25 ounces, it's $2 for another 0.75 ounces. So
Yeah.
that place was phenomenal. We had a great time.
Okay. All right. It'll be on our list when Sane and I go tear up the Bluegrass Parkway. That's what we want to do. Not this year, because we're going to take the halfling to Disney World for Thanksgiving, but next year we're going to do, and her and I aren't big vacation people. Like, we love the setup we have here in Texas. We enjoy our jobs, our life. We like to stay busy, so we never feel that urge to need to get away. But we need to do some bourbon. Like, just tear up the Bluegrass Parkway.
I think Old Forester was my favorite place to go to.
They make so many great bourbons.
Yeah, that place was awesome, and we lucked out. I showed you the special ones we got. We got a bunch of cool stuff. Anyway,
going back to the NRG Plus stuff. Managed to find it. Thanks again, Kristen, for telling me it's on the Muscle Sport website. 3 capsules, 2 grams of lion's mane mycelium extract, 50 milligrams caffeine, 50 milligrams yerba mate, 50 milligrams green tea extract, and 50 milligrams L-theanine.
yeah, it was the yerba mate that I liked that was in there. That was like one of those ingredients that was really cool, and it like just disappeared.
Yeah. I had a client reach out and said, hey, what do you think about combining caffeine with yerba in a pre-workout? And I said, let me do some digging into it, because it's usually standardized for a lower amount of caffeine content, or guarana is the other thing they were looking at combining. I said, let me do some digging. And basically there was one study I found where they combined caffeine plus guarana. So it was, I think, 150 of caffeine and 300 of guarana or something like that. And they found that the combination of those two was greater than just either one in isolation. So
Gotcha.
that may be forthcoming in a product. I'd like to try it myself just to see.
Well, you know what that company that you like, NutriCost, right?
Oh yeah, NutriCost is outstanding.
They have guarana pills, and I think they're 2 capsules, 1,000 milligram, and I think that it's 250 milligram caffeine. I think you're right, it's 25% or some shit like that. Yeah, so I'll be honest with you. So sometimes for my morning test cardio, I will do a combination of I do a little cocktail of ephedrine, which you can buy obviously over the counter. So I'll do ephedrine the old-fashioned way, aspirin and caffeine. So
old school.
Yeah, old school. 25 milligram of ephedrine, pure ephedrine, and a baby dose of aspirin, which is about 84 milligram, I think. And I'll take either caffeine or guarana. I tried to experiment with both. And I'll tell you, from my observation, I feel better on guarana than caffeine anhydrous.
Yeah, there might be something there with all the other polyphenols and fun bioactives that are in there.
Definitely, like, kind of when I do cardio and I do just caffeine, ephedrine, and aspirin, I get the thermogenic effect and that energy. Obviously, it feels great, no doubt about it. I mean, it's a proven combination. But when I do guarana, what it does is also gives me kind of like it doesn't give me that, that caffeine effect where you feel, okay, I just took some caffeine. It makes me feel energized, but more smooth. like a lot smoother energy, feels a lot better. Yet the thermogenic effect is still just as good.
We have this conversation a lot. I've been talking a lot about caffeine, and Robert and I have talked on podcasts a lot about caffeine and caffeine timing, right? Because you have, especially because you're talking about fasted cardio, you have cortisol levels, right, are higher in the morning, and it's like, can you throw caffeine in there, and sometimes it's sort of bouncing off a wall with cortisol, or maybe interacting negatively with it when it comes to mood. And then some people just seem to be really different too. Like my sort of cycle is, if I were to take a ton of caffeine first thing in the morning, it doesn't really do much of anything on the positive side. But if I have a small amount of caffeine,
small amount, 200 standard, good.
Or but if I use it in the afternoon, it feels completely different. It's just something to do sometimes with the timing of how, and that's not everybody. Like some people,
maybe because it's timing, maybe it's because it's fasted. Because I can't imagine taking 400 or 500 milligram of caffeine on an empty stomach. I just don't feel like. I feel like there would be some side effects.
Well, especially when you're doing like cardio, because you're raising your heart rate and doing all these other things at the same time as well. Like we have a lot of people, because I have these conversations with people that can't. They have their morning coffee and it doesn't do anything for them, and I was like, well, you might just literally be throwing that coffee. You build up a tolerance to it, obviously, but also it might not be the right time of the day for you to be bringing in caffeine. Sometimes, especially if you wake right up and you're dead asleep, you haven't recycled that adenosine out of your system, and things are still sort of built up there. Taking in caffeine at that time of day might actually just be hurting your tolerance to it and really not giving you any of the benefits.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. I've listened to a few of the Huberman podcasts. Andrew Huberman, he's a neuroscientist and ophthalmologist out at Stanford. I know he's been on Rogan's podcast, and he's amassing a pretty substantial following for his podcast. And he talks into supplements and nootropics every now and then. He's mentioned something where if you can hold off having caffeine for the first 90, maybe 60, 90, 120 minutes, so an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours after waking up, and then you have your caffeine, you get a much more pronounced effect from it, like in terms of immediate stimulation and long-lasting effects, where when you first wake up, there's still some reorganizing of the neurotransmitters in your body, plus cortisol thrown in there too, that makes it not as beneficial.
Yeah, I know. It was like 2 years ago I said that, but I don't have any following, so now he says it, and he's a genius, so I don't know, whatever. Yeah. But actually, I will say, like, it wasn't my original thought anyway. It was actually Will Wallace. Yeah. Him and I started to have, when he was going through to get his PhD, with what he's doing.
Where is he at now? He was with Life Extension for a while, but where is he now?
He's at Muscle Feast.
Okay.
They have their own testing. I'm pretty sure he's still there. They have their own manufacturing facility and their own products, but then they're building a research facility, which is really, really cool. Okay. The last I checked in with him, that's what they were sort of building towards. He was getting, it was because they're getting all this equipment set up, and they're going to hopefully be one of these companies that gets into the actual, research side of things, which is sweet. We need that for sure. So
the more, the better.
I didn't know that they were so huge and they had all these big plans. I remember seeing like some stuff about maybe their proteins or something. They do a really good job on Amazon, and then I got to see. It's funny how many like companies that look on social media like they're just dominating, and then you see the numbers and you're like, oh wow. But then there's these companies that aren't in the everyday conversations, and then you see what's going on under the hood and you're like, oh man, these people are killing it.
Yeah. Legion Athletics does huge amounts on Amazon. Muscle Feast, I remember encountering them 2016, Legion. Right after I started doing a lot of just writing with Mike and them.
Mike's awesome.
And it's interesting to see the evolution of Muscle Feast, because when I remember back then, I just thought the labels didn't look good. I'm not one for labeling, but compared to the other stuff at that time, it was But yeah, apparently they are still doing outstanding.
Yeah, Legion was one of the first companies that actually made me notice the power of Amazon years back, because I'm like, why are these places on Amazon? How are they making so much money compared to who I thought was like the big dogs in this? And I started to see numbers, and I'm like, uh,
They're seven figures a month, man.
Legion, yeah, on one product. Like Legion was one of them. Genius was another one. You were friends with Robert over there. Like,
yep.
talked to him
And he's now got that new Alpha Grind coffee that he sent me some tubs of to try and stuff.
That dude's a maniac. But Mike with Legion was one of the first people to really get into Amazon. They built Pulse into a juggernaut. You know, it was they make really cool formulas and stuff like that. It's nothing crazy, but they got in, and once they got locked into that spot sort of on Amazon, you can't overthrow them now. You can't put enough money into that system. So they got in, they were smart, man, and they just killed it on there. So
yeah. Kristen, Supplement Snack, says, Ball's energy drink was an OG gamer energy drink that had guarana and caffeine. I pulled it up. It is a massive prop blend. Carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, citric acid, natural guarana extract, sodium benzoate, caffeine, natural and artificial flavors, caramel color. This product contains, quote, high levels of caffeine, 102 milligrams per 16-ounce beverage.
That was before, her and I were together, so...
Before she got properly caffeinated. This is
actually, it's a nice little can. I like it.
Yeah.
So it looks like a Bud Light, one of the metal things you take.
So I say.
No, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's but I mean, 25 grams of sugar will help with that too. With that.
But I mean, if it's like older, you don't forget Red Bull had shitload of sugar too. Still does.
Oh yeah.
So I mean that's fine.
Well, yeah, I think that that's
the branding
important.
is very cool. The branding is really cool.
The companies adapt with the consumers, right? That's what we see a lot is, there's always people complain about brands and stuff like that. I was like, the majority of brands are only giving people
what the consumer wants,
what they're asking for, right? Like, so once this narrative gets out there that artificial sweeteners are causing all of your problems, then the company's going to pivot to things with natural sweeteners in it. And then they say, when vegan everything became all the rage, and companies are going to pivot to that, and they're just going to sell people what they want to sell. So when I always get weird when people like start to bite the hand that feeds them, so to speak, and they start to I'm like, you think that they didn't just do that, out of their own brains. They're just sort of following what the market determines. They're business people.
But also you got to remember, and it definitely applies. Each and every brand has its own following, and its own customer base, and they have certain expectations. So, like for example, and I spoke to Patrick from Maris Nutrition recently about this. For example, if you take like a pro, right, and I said it before on this podcast as well. When it comes to certain things like pre-workouts and whatnot, I think that we do things very, very differently, and his customer base will prefer what he does. My customer base won't touch his stuff because it's slightly different, and I think that it's good because we kind of play to our own strength, and we kind of like make sure that our branding and what we stand for and what we represent and our customers. I think that we're supposed to be different, and that's the reason why I see certain brands kind of they try to reinvent the wheels and they try to jump into something else. Yes, you potentially can get new customers without a doubt, but you're also risking losing yours because they used to certain things. When we posted that we will be releasing the new Assassin, I mean, there were of course a few smart ass comments such as, "Oh my God, this is going to kill people" or whatnot. We always get that, but for majority of people, they were like, "When can I get it? When can I get it? Is it going to be stronger? Is it going to be stronger?" And they want it stronger. That's what they expected. They expect it to be stronger, not necessarily better, but most of them want a stronger pre-workout because they understand what Assassin represents. Now, if tomorrow we release Assassin with 200 milligrams of caffeine, people are going to go like, "What the fuck is this? You're cheating us." I mean, in reality, there's nothing wrong with 200 milligrams of caffeine. That's a solid pre-workout. But if we leave everything as is, but we drop the caffeine to 200 milligrams, people, even though caffeine is cheap as fuck, people are going to think that we're trying to save money and we're cheating them. But And that's the reason why you have to stay in your own lane and you have to do things that that your customers are expecting from you, and
Well,
that's
yeah.
very, very important. And that's the reason why certain brands are doing great on Amazon. Certain brands are doing good in retail stores. Some certain brands are doing great on bodybuilding.com and whatnot. But everybody has a following. Look at Jim Stefani. Jim Stefani hasn't really changed ever since he launched. I think he changed his pre-workout recently, but that's about it. And he kind of stayed true to himself, which I respect. He's the one who's using BCAAs in his pre-workouts, and he swears by it. He thinks that that's the way to go. And, probably we would disagree with that, but who the fuck cares? He has army of followers, he has army of customers, and they love that product. They love him. They follow him. I think it's called Jim Army or something like that. That army is pretty substantial.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that as a business owner, when somebody showed me his formula, and I was fully expected that I'm going to fucking trash it, and I was like, no, I think he's done a great job because it's almost identical to what he's done before with slight improvements, but it's still the same thing. It's exactly the same thing as I do with Hooligan. Hooligan remains pretty much the same pre-workout for the past fucking 6-7 years with slight adjustments, but still staying true to its core. So when you see the label, you're going to know, yeah, this is Hooligan, this is not Assassin, this is not Bare Knuckle. So you're going to recognize what it is. But I think that the key point is stay true to somebody asked me recently also, which protein do you prefer? Because we have the 50-50, we have isolate, which tastes phenomenal too, and we have egg protein, which also tastes pretty good. And all of them are outstanding when it comes to the quality of protein. And they were very, very surprised because I think I was expected to say whatever the latest is, or I was expected to say, oh, I love all of them. And I said, no, my favorite is still 50-50. That's just my go-to. Not saying that isolate is bad, not saying the egg protein is bad. They're phenomenal too. But my go-to is 50-50. That's pretty much what I use on a daily basis most of the time, ever since we had it initially. You will see 80 or 90% of the time me mixing 1 scoop of dark chocolate and 1 scoop of peanut butter cookie, or 1 scoop of peanut butter cookie and 1 scoop of vanilla. And that's pretty much my staple almost on a daily basis. Sometimes I'll create some sort of a variety. I'm big on coconut, so I like the German cake that we have with chocolate and coconut. I like that one too. That's in isolate, so I will use that once in a while. But I have my favorites, and I think that's the same thing with a consumer. They have their favorites. They have their favorite brands. They have their favorite products, and they want you to kind of stay true to yourself and true to them by making products that they want. Because otherwise they're going to go to somebody else.
It also is a different. What I see a lot of brands that are confused on is they don't really know where their expectations or where they're trying to go with it don't fit with what their brand actually wants to do. And I'll explain, supplements to us don't mean what supplements mean to 99% of the population out there, right? 99% of the population out there knows about, they know the grocery store brands that they walk by, every day. They know melatonin makes you sleepy. They know this. They still think creatine, is, harmful. They think caffeine, at a certain dose will kill you, kind of thing. So there's always that. If you went around, you mentioned Like a Pro. We love Like a Pro. If you go to any of my friends, people we go around with, 50-75% of them, if you go, Like a Pro, they go, yeah. If you went to a grocery store and you asked every person in that grocery store if about Like a Pro supplements, unless you're next door to Jeff's house, probably no one's going to know what it is. So it's even more important what you're saying, to know who your customer is and then stay true to that. Because I see companies, they start to want to expand maybe, but they don't know how to speak to anybody else. So take a company like Ghost, right? They figured out the way to speak to more customers is not through another supplement. It was through an energy drink. And that sort of opened up, their market to other people. Rise kind of doing the same thing. So it's same thing like what you're saying. How do you not lose your identity but speak to more customers sort of at the same time. And I see once COVID happened and the supply chain got weird, and then you saw a lot of companies. We had this conversation before where suddenly companies were trying to push, certain health products that they never did before, and it just, it just wasn't part of their brand and stuff like that. They were just doing it. It just started to fall flat, on people a little bit. So anyway, I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, we're doing another over 2 hours. Just note before we wrap up, and clearly we're going to have part 3. It's inevitable now. We're not going to miss it this time. So at least fire away one of the questions that you had for me.
Oh, so one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because you and I talked a lot about your trip, when you went over to spend some time in Ukraine and seeing, and I was curious. I know that you'll always be you, and there's some things that you'll always speak up when you feel like something needs to be said. But when you came back from that, was your perspective on the supplement space, did that change at all? Like some of the things that we find ourselves like getting involved in, did you come back with like maybe a different mindset, or maybe I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. Like
no, it's a good question. But do you mean mindset when it comes to a particular subject or in general?
No, I mean, because I feel like an experience like that would have to change someone. So maybe not necessarily like a supplement experience, but just like if it made you maybe approach your brand or anything like any differently, how you're, because you started to do some things where you're giving back, and I'm sure it changes perspective on relationships with people. So it was one of those things that I can't imagine going through it. So, and I know you're a very open and honest person, and things matter to you very much. So I'm sure you had a lot of introspective.
Wow, that's a question to finish the show with. But it's probably the best question, most difficult question I've been asked in a long time. But it's a good one. I got to give it to you. It's really good. So when I go to different countries, right? I travel sometimes extensively. So when I travel to different countries, no matter where it is, it can be Thailand, it can be Germany, England, when I went to Russia, it's always the same thing. I'm on the phone with a Pollen Matters. Pollen Business. I'm constantly on the phone with Kay. We constantly talk. We constantly, something has to be done. I even call manufacturers. So I do all that stuff because obviously it's important. So the same thing with Carolina right now is on vacation in Puerto Rico. I mean, business as usual. She's constantly on the phone. She's constantly talking to everybody. Business. I'm pretty sure she reached out to Robert at least once. I mean, she's working. So there is no such thing as vacation or anything like that because we still do what we're supposed to do. Now, when the war broke down and with the events that happened in Ukraine, first of all, I want to say that I'm not a very political person. To me, the whole Democrats, Republicans, and all that bullshit stuff. To me, it's I think that people are forgetting, especially in this country, that first and foremost they're Americans, and I think that kind of got lost somewhere there, where they decided to, to care more about the genders and the colors and the political parties, and it kind of went too far, and they forgot, when 9/11 happened, everybody was very united. I mean, the whole country came as one, and I think those times, unfortunately, well. Thank God we didn't have another 9/11, but that unity is long gone for sure. The country is divided. So when it happened in Ukraine, again, politics aside, some people, a lot of people supported obviously Ukraine because it was invaded by another country, and it's obviously wrong. On the other hand, obviously you have a few people who are saying, well, Ukraine is a very corrupted country, and I agree with that. But I also think that every country is corrupted. When it comes to politicians, I think they're the worst crooks. They thieves, crooks, and they politicians. They steal, they lie, and they do everything to benefit themselves. So it's not only Ukraine, I think it's every other country. So to me, what mattered the most is that people I went to school with, they were going to war. And I mean, maybe I look young and handsome, but I'm at the same time I'm 48. So you have 48-year-old men going to war. One of my classmates just came back and not in one piece, so to speak. So he's alive, but he's definitely not in one piece. And I've seen one of my childhood friends helping as much as he was helping, people and taking trips to all the hot spots and delivering food and necessities and then medical supplies and all that. It kind of like woke a certain emotion in me that I felt like I'm hiding, like I'm chicken shit, that I lived a good life while somebody else in the country where I was born is doing something and I'm just sitting here. And the talk started like, I think I want to go. I think I want to go. Don't get me wrong. As much as people think of me and certain things that people think of me, I was scared. I was petrified. I knew that there is always a possibility, that something can go wrong. Mm-hmm. And, but the decision was made to go. Once I went over there and I flew to Vienna. From Vienna, I flew to Budapest. And from Budapest, it was a car drive to western part of Ukraine, where I was born, to cross the border. Once I crossed the border, and I have to admit that it just, even though that particular area was war-free, at least at the time.
How long had it been since you'd been there?
About 12 years.
Okay. Wow.
12 years. I visited about 12 years ago, maybe 13. And it definitely, emotions and everything else, place I was born. And I remember like trying to, because there was about 5 or 6 of us in the car. So I was a little bit embarrassed that I had tears running down. Like I would not see it in the car, but I'm pretty sure they saw. And then the very first night I'm on the phone with Marina and sirens, the bombs are flying. And now, okay, shit just got real. This is the real deal. And then, of course, the trip to Kiev and to see all the tanks and all the destruction and meeting people and seeing things that I'd rather not talk about, that obviously will impact you for the rest of your life. 100% will impact you. So a poem during that trip did not exist. There was no Robbie, the businessman, Robbie, Apollon, Jim, Apollon, Nutrition. All of a sudden, all of that just ceased to exist. It was not saying it wasn't important. Of course, it's important, but at that particular moment, there were more important things, such as talking on the phone to the loved ones because you're scared. Talking to people that you meet over there, interacting with them, feeling what they feel. I mean, at least trying to feel what they feel, and seeing, a beautiful country being destroyed and invaded. And, I had a couple of arguments. I try not to argue about the subject and I let it go now. Mm-hmm. But I always say to people, politics aside, remember one thing. No country should invade or has the right to invade another country. No country, no government has the right to kill innocent civilians, no matter what. There is no right for that. And not only that, because let's not forget, it's not only the Ukrainians who are being killed. It's also the Russian army, Russian soldiers. Today, you're not allowed to say in Russia that there is a war going on. They call it a special military operation. And if you say it's a war, then you're spreading propaganda, which means you might end up in jail. So freedom of speech is gone, and you basically have Russia right now going back to Soviet Union times, where you're not allowed to say anything because you have no freedom. So that kind of like puts you in perspective of when you're coming back, you kind of realize what's more important. And I think I still have my temper. That has not changed. I still have my fucked up moods. That has not changed. I guess that's in my blood, in my genetics. But I handle it a lot better because every time you think of what's going on over there and what you've seen, and I don't think that I should say certain things because it's just, I don't think it's for this particular show, and I'd rather people not know. But I can only say that I've seen things that will forever stay in my memory, and I wish I would be able to erase them and delete them, but unfortunately I can't. And you know, you realize that sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do, but you kind of have to. So, even now I have a couple of trips planned this year to various destinations, but I'm not ruling out at the same time that I might go back. It just because it felt, I'm not saying that I've made a difference, of course I haven't, but just being able to help a little bit, whether it's financially, whether it's by other means, it feels like you contributed something. Remember Schindler's List, where at the end, Oscar Schindler said that, one more, I think, what did he say? He had something on him that was made out of gold. I tried to remember what it was. And he said that that could have saved another two Jews. And he starts crying. So it's the same thing where you have that feeling that maybe you could have done a little bit more. And, you have that guilty feeling about it. But I think that, when you come back here and people live the way they live and they have the luxury of choosing supplements they want, of choosing certain things, of choosing clothes, and then they take it for granted. They literally take it for granted, and they, blow shit out of proportion because they don't like certain things. And, they want to make sure that you don't say him or her, but because it's wrong these days, and they make up shit where a boy can identify himself as a girl and vice versa. And that's okay. And that's the biggest problem, apparently. While there are bombs somewhere flying and kids the same age that are not choosing to be a boy or a girl are dying. So I think that trips like that, I'm not saying they're necessary, and I would probably advise everybody to avoid them. But yeah, to avoid them and hopefully not to have to ever do them. But I think that on the other hand, and I'm playing devil's advocate right now by saying complete bullshit that I shouldn't be saying, these trips are also good because it's like a slap in the face that tells you, wake the fuck up. Your life is not that bad.
Well, I think, and that's kind of because I didn't necessarily have I expected a direct answer. I was just kind of curious, the thought process, because one of the things I was thinking, the reason why I asked that question and why it had been on my mind a few days before our podcast is the timing of it. I thought was really interesting because you've been building a pollen for years, and then you build this snowball of momentum, and I know how 24/7 of your day is dedicated to, you're releasing a new product every week, and you're just doing, and what happens to us then, right, is whether it's not if you own a business, it's like your job and your career and your kids, and we slowly narrow our lens, more and more and more until you're just so laser focused on that one thing in front of you. And then right in the middle of that process, you sort of blew that, open and went and experienced this whole thing. So sometimes, and not that you said it perfectly, it's you don't ever want to have to go through something like that, but it's one of those things that maybe all of a sudden helps you even get your business to the next level, or something in your life where all of a sudden some things maybe you realize are more important, and you were like, wow, I was really getting bogged down in some details that really didn't matter. So that was just kind of where I thought the whole timing of it was pretty fascinating, that you were right in the middle of this huge momentum with the brand, and probably up sleepless nights all night every night trying to figure out what's next for Apollon, and then this tragedy happens that you want to be a part of. And I would assume going through that whole entire process would just have and I know you're a guy that you wear your emotions on your sleeve, you don't hide from it, so I figured it would probably have an impact on you like that. So I was just kind of curious.
No, thank you. Like I said, it was an amazing question, and actually, while I was speaking, it actually made me think even more about it. And as I said, we sometimes take things for granted in life, and we don't realize what's important. But when you go to a place like that, the only thing, and you know what, I don't care what anyone says, how brave they are. No, once you're there, you're not brave. You praying to survive, because
And I remember that in the region where I was staying, the western part of Ukraine on the border with Poland and Slovakia and Hungary, it was relatively safe. And my last night, because I went to Kiev and I took that trip, and when I came back, I stayed with a friend of mine last night before we were going back. And I remember all of a sudden, I was with Marina on the phone, and there is news that a bomb just exploded not that far from me. So they were sporadically throwing. That was the first bomb that landed in the area, and the funny thing is that, well, not funny, but I guess ironic in a way, is that when I went to Kiev, they bombed Kiev the same night that I was there, and then I lived basically, you know, in a suburb of Kiev. I spent a few nights over there, and as I left, I found out that literally the next day, the house down on the street was blown up. So it's just one of those things where you never know what's going to happen in a war zone, because it is a war zone, and you see things that again you don't want to see. And there was one particular moment that literally, I think I think I was never that scared in my entire life. I actually have a photo somewhere. So we were just outside Kiev in a little town that was absolutely destroyed pretty much entirely. So we were walking around, and I actually filmed a video over there, and I talked to some people who live there, and I remember we were by the playground, and like typical children's playground around the apartment buildings, that I was walking around, taking pictures, looking, talking to people, and all of a sudden I got very close to the playground where it had flowers and stuff like that. And as I got closer, I got knocked out by a friend of mine who basically just pushed me, and I fell to the ground because I failed to see that there was a sign right in front of me that the entire playground was covered with mines. There were landmines all over, and I didn't see it. So there was a sign not to step on it, and that's when you're like few steps away from it, and then you realize, holy shit, you know what? This could have been it. And I remember we got a bulletproof vest, that they're wearing specifically for military operations, and they had it with them, and they put it on me. So I think I did video wearing that, very uncomfortable. But again, it puts your life in perspective, and you kind of realize what's real and what's not. And then I think that I still gonna say this, that I mellowed coming back here, because certain things that would fucking make me lose shit, I look at them more like, yeah, whatever, So it's not something that's gonna ignite me. But probably about before the trip, I would definitely lose my shit. But now I can take it on the chin a little bit better.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a good spot to. I appreciate you sharing that, because it's like, I was thinking about it too. We get on here and we joke around, and we talk shit, and little jabs here and there. But I know that how I feel in my personal life, just things. It has changed my perspective a lot on what I see as important and stuff like that, and then something.
It's the experiences in life. Life experiences will change you. Sometimes they will make you a better man. Sometimes they will make you a stronger man. Sometimes they will make you a piece of shit, because everybody around you is a piece of shit. But that kind of forces you to be that. So yeah. Guys. On this note, let's wrap up. And I think part 3 is definitely coming soon.
Yeah,
part 4.
Part 4. All right.
And better be a part 5.
So we give the people what they want. If that's what they want, we'll get on here.
Yeah, thank you everybody who joined us. Really appreciate all the questions and participation.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's definitely becoming something. Thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate you. Have a good trip. I know you're leaving on Thursday, right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. That was awesome. The amount of interaction and questions was fantastic. So always appreciate people taking this much time to, just listen to us talk. And
it was great.
So.
Coffee incoming, and blackberry cheesecake and Kiev cake for Robert.
They behaved a little better today.
Right.
Like, comment, subscribe. Leave us a comment down below for issues to tackle next time the three of us get together and shoot the shit. Thank you all as always. We will catch you next time.
Thank you, guys.